So, I guess we can open the meeting. We're not going to have, our first candidate's not coming till 4:15, but it is 4:02. This is the Board of Selectmen meeting. It is March 13th. And I'm just going to open the meeting. Next, we should do the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do you have any minutes or anything scheduled on Tamika to look at? Okay. So I don't know if I know at the end you have any other reasonable anticipated discussions. I know that we all attended the Finance Committee meeting, and Karen had asked us to give her information on anything we wanted to add to the budget. I don't know how we want to entertain that discussion. One of the things I thought we might want to entertain is putting into the town administrator's budget some funds for grants and possibly interns. And those, so grant writing and internships, which would also be under wages, so it gives us movability depending on how we negotiate. I mean, does that sound like something
That sounds
the
reasonable.
board wants to consider?
So moving from the town budget into,
Well, with the additional, with the override, this would be contingent on the
Right.
override as well. Additional funds in the town administrator's
so they can
budget
put in for those?
for internship opportunities and for grant writing opportunities.
Yeah.
And we could do that, through that agency that I brought through.
Yeah.
You could use funds for that, or where it's wage funds, they could be moved around within that budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know if there was how much of a consideration there would be if we're looking at an override, what the pros and cons are for an actual like grant administrator position versus a and/or economic development position, and how that would fit in, if that was a serious consideration in the override discussion or not, because those are the two of the other hiring pieces that we hear a lot of.
There were some other positions though too. What, the conservation person, was that pulled out, or was that?
It was pulled out.
But that's
Conservation
that's
agent.
in if the override goes in. That's in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I need to, like, it wasn't clear to me what was in if the override were to pass versus what was
Right.
out.
Started to go through it, and I got confused with that one, and then after I looked at it again, it looked like you had taken it out, but it would go back in.
Yeah.
See, the only problem with the economic developer, we have a town, whatever you want to call him, he could be doing that,
I just think, I guess the advantage to an internship at first is it can be project-based, and it can
Mhm.
develop into and the other thing is, we're gonna have to look at a much larger number in benefits and,
Right.
other opportunities, so I don't know that we have that number. With the things I recommended or made as a suggestion is we could just put an amount in there and work within our means.
Right.
I think it's more difficult to develop a whole position unless, we didn't get anything, right? The business group was supposed to provide us with something, right? Tamika, weren't they gonna present us with something, because they made the recommendation to hire somebody, but they never provided us with information regarding a position or
Salary or
expectations.
I thought we kind of told Randy we were going to back off for a while on that position.
We told him to bring it forward.
Yeah.
That we probably, he wanted to put it under ARPA. We said, I don't know that we wouldn't put a permanent position under ARPA because it's not continuous. And then we had talked about as possible internships. So we kind of went back and forth, but he was supposed to, I thought, still bring us the proposal for the position.
I mean, I guess in my head, economic development and grant administrator, like more than just someone to go out and help us get the grants, but really making sure that all the upfront work is done and then the reporting pieces are done also. More of that administrative piece. Both of those positions seem like they, in my head at least, are an initial investment on the town, but then the amount of monies that they would be bringing in would be, make up for that investment. And so I'm not opposed to you starting internship wise and everything. My concern, I guess, is just that what happens then when or if the town decides that that's a route we want to go and there's no funds there. You don't like.
Right, but I mean, we can never count on. I guess we had talked about the town administrator. We wanted to have those type of characteristics. This also gives that individual tools to have people work with them and develop that kind of a program. And if it works and it starts to show a return, obviously there's going to be additional justification to add another position in the future. I mean, it's a starting point because
Yeah.
we have nothing now.
So start with the interns.
Right, and if we put it in that budget and we negotiate, that money's all kind of there as that the town administrator position is going to be responsible for whatever that they'll get that salary, and if they have those other grants and the interns, then they can play. They can use that as a resource, or we can use that as a bargaining.
Is that, I don't know anything about it, is that typically an hourly, like a per diem type thing? Is that
The
how that works?
internship?
Yeah, is that typically how they work?
Yeah, it's usually a semester thing, and it's usually paid hourly. So I don't know what kind of numbers. I think Karen's going to want us to give some numbers, but he's early. He's here, but he's early. Okay. She. Oh, I'm sorry. So I don't know. I guess we're going to have to come up like what kind of money we want to put into the town administrator's budget for those type of resources. I mean, what seems feasible? Like I said, the lady that came and spoke about internships, she said on an average it's $15 an hour. I imagine it's typically probably, is it full-time?
She said about 20 hours a week.
Okay. Who's doing the math? Anybody have a calculator? 20 hours, so 15.
$300
Right, and then probably like 4 months, like 4.3 is per month, so 300 times 4.3. Tamika?
Hold on, hold on. I'm doing it in my
Supposed to
head.
know these.
I'm doing it in my head, hold on.
About 1,500.
Yeah, just shy of 1,300.
Okay, so if we threw a few grand in there for that purpose, it'd be a couple interns.
It's not big.
I mean, we just want to develop a program. I don't know what kind of money you guys are considering. Under the grant writing, they said it could be up to $1,000 a grant,
Yeah.
depending on
They
how many
estimated,
grants in a year.
About 10,000 a year to budget for it.
Okay.
For a town of this size.
So 10 and 6. So I guess I would propose 10 and 10, to be honest.
Because they also did say with the bigger grants, you can kind of work it in, right? Isn't that what
Right,
they
if you
said?
get the
Yeah,
grant, like you
administration.
can write it into the grant, but you're only going to get that if you get the grant.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's almost like a revolving fund kind of a thing, because you might get your money back on it. I mean, does that seem reasonable, 10 and 10 towards those resources? Or does somebody have different opinions?
No, that seems realistic.
It's a necessity, I think. I mean,
Right, if we're going to try to move forward
Yeah,
in
we have
those
to do
areas,
something.
it gives us opportunity. And this is contingent on the override, because obviously we
Right,
don't
obviously.
have the funding for that. Do you have other questions or concerns, Leah? You seem somewhat hesitant.
No, I mean, I just am still. I mean, it's contingent on the override. I guess my concern is that we have. It would be a good concern to have, but we have success, and then we have no more money to move anything that's on a momentum gaining forward trajectory. We have no more money because we need more money.
Right.
We've expended those funds.
But
So
like
I
I
guess
said-
that's my, but that's a,
My buy-in is if we get a grant writer and they bring in grant money, they're starting to pay for themselves, and they prove themselves, and then there's justification that it's really not, it's a wash for the town because they're gonna bring in money, so it's worth hiring, you know what I'm saying, or putting that as a
what do we
permanent.
really have to lose at this point?
Right. The other thing I thought about, even if we look at like an engineer, because we had talked about starting to look at projects in town, somebody like from WPI or somebody like that could work at some of the project developments for towards looking at different plans and things for any kind of buildings and stuff.
We have a town planner that we pay big bucks to.
Well, my thought
And
would be
he
the
should be
town
able to
planner
do
would be the
something.
one that would oversee the
He should be able to
intern.
do it, never mind oversee it.
Right, but,
Me-
but also, use it as a resource. If it's not getting done right now, so if we
No,
get.
but he's, never mind.
I understand your point, but I'm thinking that that intern could report, worked with the planner on projects, because they're gonna need guidance. They're gonna be and that would be his responsibility to provide that guidance for the internship if it's related to economic development type stuff. I don't know, that's my thought.
I don't disagree with it. We need help.
And like that, and it's flexibility. It's a line item in the town administrator's budget that would, as long as it's in line with our intent, I think there's flexibility.
Yep.
Okay, so is that something I'm gonna
Yeah,
pass
and
on
I
to
mean,
Karen?
if I understand correctly, you're thinking it's of seeing it as an increase in the town administrator's salary line item to be then flexible.
Well, we would have the line item, we have what we already have in the line
Yeah.
item. But it gives us flexibility because those are all wage items.
Right.
If we need to negotiate those, because the town administrator, expectation is that that individual would work on grant and would work on economic
Right.
development. So it makes sense that either it goes into the salary or it goes into the responsibility of overseeing so it gives us options. So do we want to recommend that Gary put that into the budget and pass it on to the finance committee as a?
I would recommend that, but you don't need a motion first, do we?
Not necessarily, I just want an agreement and
Oh, yeah.
instructions
I
of the
agree.
town
I think
administrator.
it's a good idea, yeah.
Okay.
Again, pending the override.
Pending the
Yeah,
override.
no, we don't have an extra
All
20,000.
pending the override.
All right,
You think?
thank
Yep.
you. All right,
All
so
set.
are we ready?
Okay.
So,
Mr. Chair, John Petrin, Community Paradigm for the audience. And we're here for the interviews for town administrator. So we have the 3 candidates tonight. We're starting with Justine Caggiano. And I understand the process will be I'll ask the questions that, were presented to the board. But feel free to interject, with follow-up questions or questions of your own at any point. I want it free-flowing. I'm here to, try to get the information for you to make a decision as you go forward.
if I can just clarify on one point though, as far as the follow-up questions, they need to be in line with the questions because we want to be consistent with questions.
They should be.
Yeah,
They
I don't
have
want to go
be.
too much
That's your
outside.
choice.
Yeah, I want to
Yeah.
be fair to all the candidates, so I don't want to. I mean, I know that it's going to generate questions, but I don't want to go totally off in another direction and
Mhm.
not giving that any other candidate the same opportunity.
Okay,
so
great.
if we can try to just stay focused to the question. Obviously, if they make a comment specifically that we want to ask for further clarification or something on, but not just unless the board disagrees, not one that comes totally off left field. It was not.
And I'll let you control that line of questioning from your board members,
Okay.
as we go forward.
Everybody's good with that?
Okay, all set?
All right. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
They didn't start tearing that house down.
Take your jacket off if you
What do you think about it?
get comfortable in here. So our first candidate this evening, Justine Caggiano.
Hello.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
How are you?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Linda Nichols.
Nice to meet you.
Tom Galvin?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Skip Clark.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Same here.
Gary Keller.
Nice to meet you.
And you can grab the seat up front here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming. Before the storm.
Yes.
Truly. So, Justine, first of all, congratulations, on being one of the 3 finalists here for the Town of Rutland Town Administrator position. And thank you for coming this evening to meet with the board. So I'll be asking the questions as we discussed, going through, but the board can interject with follow-up questions as they see fit, through the chair, going through this questioning session. So why don't we start? The board has introduced themselves to you. Why don't you give us an introduction, of who you are, why you're here, why you're the best fit for this town, and why would you want to do this position going forward?
Well, that's a loaded question.
Yes.
So just a little bit about me. I'm actually from Rutland originally. I went to Wachusett, and then from there I went to Suffolk University and got my bachelor's degree in journalism. I also, education-wise, I did the certificate program through the MMA, and John was actually my professor. And then now I'm finishing up my MPA at Suffolk University as well. I started my career in state government. I worked at the State House in the legislature. From there I went to the Department of Higher Education where I worked with veterans. And from there I transitioned to municipal government. I started in the town of Millbury. I worked for the town in the public schools. And then I've been in Ware for a little over a year now as the HR director. I'm also on the board of directors of MEGA, the Massachusetts Education and Government Association, which is a workers' comp insurance company. I also was the 2021 one of the 2021 MMA Municipal Fellows. Why am I here? Started off because I am from Rutland, so you don't forget where you came from. I also think that this is the next step for me professionally, and I wouldn't be sitting here wasting your time if I didn't think I was the best fit for the position, because I really understand how important it is for you to fill this position.
So the next step is, develop a vision for the town. So how would you work with the board to understand the vision of the board for the town? And what do you see as your role in that process, as well as setting a path for implementation?
So I think if I was the candidate that was selected, one of the first things I would do is I would be meeting with the board individually and find out what each of their priorities are and how I can help implement that or move in that direction. I think a lot of what I would do initially is a lot of observing. I'm sure there's a lot of things that the town does really well, but then I kind of see, kind of where the holes are, maybe what I can bring to the town. All of that would be communicated with the board. My role is, what I see this role is I want to set the board up to make the best decision possible. So I'm going to make sure they have all the information to make the best decision for the town.
So you've been an HR director for several years now. What do you see as what makes you anxious about stepping into the #1 seat, of the position?
So I have been doing HR for quite some time. This position would be obviously it'd be the top person, the person in command, and would be responsible for a lot outside the scope of HR, but I am fortunate enough that I've had the opportunity, especially in the town of Millbury, to kind of do a lot of project management and get my feet wet and stuff outside of HR. For example, I was responsible for the Transportation Improvement Project, which was an $18 million project for the town. I worked on things like the MS4 compliance and the stormwater management. So I am familiar with a lot of aspects of running down government. I was responsible for a lot of grants. I started a Veterans Affairs Task Force. So I don't know if there's anything specifically I'd be nervous. Probably the unknown. Probably getting to know everybody and the staff and what do they have for issues and how I can help.
Okay. So the board is in consensus that leadership skills are critical in this hire. Particularly with the community having to move forward after facing some issues. I'm hearing the word override, earlier discussion, and over some divisive issues, as well. What skills will you bring, and what approach will you bring to be able to address this?
Oh, sure. I think I'm a very collaborative manager. I don't pretend to be the smartest person in the room just because I am in a management position. I really rely on the professionals in the position, whether it be the assessor or the planner or the board, to make those decisions. So I think that's something that I bring to the table, is I am a very collaborative person. I'm very team oriented. So not even just the board or the employees, I really look forward to getting to know the residents again and finding out how, maybe there's something going on, maybe that we need a committee for this, or maybe a task force on this, or how I can bring people together. I think that's a strength of mine.
So let's talk about those team building skills a little bit.
Yeah.
We've had some transition here.
Right.
Coming into this position, other positions. So how do you come about and create that team?
I believe in professional development for employees. So in order to do that, some of the things I would do is I'd look at the contract with the town council. Maybe there's some language in there where they allow for a few trainings a year, whether it be maybe open meeting law training or public records training or something. I would also look at our insurance and our EAP and other things that I could bring, in that wouldn't really cost a lot of money, but maybe would be beneficial. I know when I was in Millbury, excuse me, I worked at the police department on an ALICE training at Town Hall. So I think making sure that the employees are educated and excited about their job, and maybe it's not the most high-paying, exciting position, but I can maybe bring some sort of joy, I guess.
So you know Rutland a little bit, so
Yeah.
what's, given its size, location, demographics, what do you think are the key issues here?
You have a lot of residential, that's for sure. So I think, I know there were talks recently about an override, and I know, especially when you care about the town, you have some strong opinions one way or the other. So I think getting the facts out about if that was something that was going to move forward, if this went forward, what does that mean? If it didn't move forward, what would that mean to services? I think working with maybe either CMRPC or bring into a contractor to find out how to bring more revenue into the town. And I know I overheard a little bit of your conversation about a grant writer. I think that's a great idea. Something that I did in the past was we brought in an assistant under the planning director who had that economic development background, but also could work on grants. So I'd probably try different avenues about that.
So Rutland relies, in depth on its volunteers, the
Yes.
citizens, in town, like so many smaller communities on the various boards. How do you work to build trust with them? You talk about, getting to meet them, but how do you build that trust and a solid relationship, with the volunteers?
I think just being present, not just being that face that they see, when they turn on their Board of Selectmen meeting or whatever, but I think being a face in the community. And that doesn't mean not be hands-on and, but I think just getting out there in the community and being, whether it be getting a coffee somewhere or meeting with someone at a restaurant or something, and just being a face that people can look to and be like, oh yeah, well, she's not just a figure. I can go to her. I can talk to her about what's going on. She's here. It's not just a 9-to-5 job. Even when I go home at the end of the day, just being a presence.
So you're an HR person, let's talk finance instead. So, describe your role, in the financial planning and, developing the budget, capital, and ensuring financial sustainability. What's been your role?
Oh, sure. So I have experience with department budgets, but in my job in Millbury, I was on the budget team. And the reason why is because personnel and insurance are one of the biggest parts of the budget. So they really wanted it to be a team. So I have done budget work as a whole. So I am familiar with budgets. I am familiar with local receipts, and I know you have a debt exclusion on your books right now. So I am familiar with the ins and outs of a budget, a municipal budget.
So how would you immerse yourself in Rutland's finances and the budget process?
Definitely meet with the finance committee. Definitely meet with the Board of Selectmen. Depending on when this position starts, is it going to be before town meeting? Is it going to be after town meeting? And really just, studying the budget. I looked at your FY23 budget, but kind of look at, the last, few years and kind of see, where were you going? I did start the 5-year capital plan in Millbury, because they didn't have one. I know in Ware we're working on doing it more of a 10-year capital plan. So that's kind of how I do that.
Financial forecasting.
Yeah.
So what would you bring to the table to look at the forecasting of the financial future of the table, of
sure.
the town?
Some of the things that I talked about in my first interview was looking at things like Chapter 70, Chapter 90. There was a period of time where I saw your Chapter 90 was just kind of flat. I want to know why, especially since you've been building so much. Are they private roads? Are they public roads? And looking at the formula, looking at how we can increase state funding. That's where I'd meet with the legislators, especially just to get on their radar, look at our big projects and make sure they know when it comes time for them to do the state budget or the transportation bond bill.
What about financial policies? What's your background in dealing with financial policies or having financial policies?
That's a struggle right now in my current town. In the town of Millbury, we had a lot of strong financial policies, and where
Same ring.
and where we're sort of developing them. Like looking at things like free cash. How much should be spent on OPEB? How many should be spent on offsetting Chapter 90 and put in towards roads? So that's definitely something we're working on right now. So that's definitely something I would bring to the town of Rutland if I was the person that was chosen. I would also take a look at your personnel policies, which because I don't really see too many. So I am familiar with policy development, and those are definitely the two areas policy-wise I would be looking at.
Okay. So you get a local resident, this is town meeting, and stands up and proceeds at length to lecture the citizens of the town on the various town functions that he or she feels are wasteful and extravagant. Through sheer force of personality, this citizen riles up the meeting, and they are bound and determined to slash funding to programs you believe are vital. How do you deal with that type of situation?
Is this like a town meeting or a board
It's a
meeting?
town meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'd make sure that they were, speaking through the moderator. I know the moderator usually sets you can talk for, 2 minutes or 1 minute or whatever is policy here. And then I say, I'd love to take your questions and concerns. Can we sit down and have a meeting? Can I put you with the right person to address your concerns? How can we address them moving forward? So I do that. I would definitely interject in a situation like that.
Okay, into HR.
Yeah.
What are some of the key issues and needs that you think needs to be addressed relative to HR today?
Sure. For the town of Rutland specifically, John?
Particularly in Rutland, but, bigger picture as well.
So I did see that some of the collective bargaining agreements are up in June. So that's definitely something I would probably dive into rather quickly if I was the person for this position. I did see that some of your other employment agreements are up in June. So again, those are the things I'd probably address, maybe clean up the language a little bit, modernize the language a little bit. But I think retention and employees is a super problem, and it's not just here, it's across the state. I think also attracting people, attracting the right people, educated people. I think that is something that's important, and it's not just specific to one town. It's across the board right now. So I think in HR that's a really big problem.
What are the 3 qualities you seek when you're hiring a person?
That's a good question. I look at their experience, first of all. I look at their passion almost, and what did they do their research before they got to the interview? What do they know? Why are they here? Is it going to be the right fit? And I look at when I put together a panel. Do I think it's going to be the right fit for the department? And do I think that hopefully they're going to stay? Ultimately, that's hard to predict, right? But hopefully, when I hire someone, they're going to stay long term.
So how do you encourage teamwork in the workplace? Sorry, how do you encourage, interruption there. How do you encourage teamwork in the workplace?
I believe in transparency. I believe in getting all the right people in the same room. I think, having department head meetings or having check-ins, I think that's super important. And I have an open door policy. If someone's having an issue, please come in and talk to me. Even if it's not a work-related problem, can I direct them to like the EAP or somewhere, just be an ear. I think just being a safe place for people, that's kind of how I've always kind of handled that.
Not everybody wants to be a team player.
Right.
So how do you deal with the employee who's just not, getting along with folks?
Oh gee. With a lot of different personalities, that's bound to happen. I would first see where they're coming from, meet them on their level, and find out why and how maybe they have needs that maybe I can make a reasonable accommodation. Maybe there's something going on with them. Maybe it was something from the past. Maybe there's something I can address. And I would just communicate with them and be like, you know what, this might be what's done before, but let's try this.
Okay. What's been the most difficult personnel issue you've had to resolve, and how did you get agreement?
That's another really great question. I think dealing with the MCAD, when I was in the town of Millbury, we had a teacher and that was no longer employed with the school district. They filed an MCAD complaint, and it took about 18 months to get resolved. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge, was just getting everything and then waiting and then meeting with the insurance appointed attorney and then waiting for them and the judge going back and forth with everything. And finally it did get resolved, luckily, in the town's favor.
So that's a process situation. Talk about more of an interpersonal situation. You
Okay.
know, of dealing with, that person was gone. So someone who was still there that you had to deal with.
I've had to put people on paid administrative leave, and I've had to investigate certain personnel issues. One specifically, I put this department head on a paid administrative leave, and while I was putting her on paid administrative leave, she actually threatened me. And unfortunately, that employee is no longer with the town, but just making sure that I did my job, crossing my T's, dotting my I's, and just, you know, handling it in the most professional way possible.
So in a small town,
Yeah.
you don't always have the depth in staff, you know, and
Yeah.
sometimes you're doing multiple jobs. You
Yeah.
don't have, there's no direct personnel administrator here, there's no,
Yeah.
you know, direct economic development person. You're having to staff. How do you address that? How do you, how do you handle that on a day-to-day basis?
I think prioritizing, definitely, just having those skills. I'm used to wearing multiple hats. That challenge doesn't scare me. I think, you know, like working with the staff that I do have, creating job descriptions for those staff, so things are kind of, I don't believe in silos. I believe, you know, we should all be working together, but just figuring out whose job is what. And if it is my job to wear, you know, 16 hats one day, I think just prioritizing and the needs of the town will come first.
Okay. And let's say you've got a situation where you need IT service, but you don't have an IT director. How do you go about assessing that type of situation? And how do you get the services that the town needs, for addressing IT or developing, how would you develop that work plan?
So if it's something where it's not my strength and you picked a good one, I think I would either bring in a service that could really, I know you kind of did that. You kind of went in and you looked at the buildings and you kind of saw what maybe some of the deficiencies were, and I know IT was one of them. So I think starting from that, maybe bringing in a company or a service, putting out to bid. I should have mentioned, I do have my MCPPO certification, so I am well-versed in procurement. I think also using my networking and my peers. I rely on the staff and the other managers and management at the MMA, and I know they call me often and we kind of trade off, oh, I have this big HR issue, okay, well, I have this management issue, and kind of networking and kind of seeing what other towns are doing, because that's not just a Rutland problem. I'm sure Heather and Paxton has the same problem. So kind of seeing like what other towns are doing. Okay.
So how would you increase communications, both internally and externally?
That's a good question. I believe in communication. My background is in communication. So I think having those, monthly department head meetings with the staff, sending out, maybe monthly emails, but I think getting the word out to the public, using cable access, using the website, using Facebook, going to the senior center, maybe putting out a press release if it's something big going on, calling the Holden Landmark and see if they want to run a story, or think that's how I would get the word out there if there were things going on in communication. I think communication with the public is huge for transparent government.
So what does customer service mean to you, and how would you apply that to town business?
So I think making sure that the residents of the town are getting the best service possible. I think being a manager, it's also about customer service. Everything is customer service. Allowing the residents to come in and express frustration, or maybe a board member's having a problem with something, or one of the employees. It's all about how you handle things. And I think just being calm and listening to people, and just taking it one step at a time, one issue at a time.
So tell us a little bit about your past interactions and engagement with citizens, and your past role with that, and
Yeah.
some examples.
So one that just came to mind, I brought up the Transportation Improvement Project. There were days where I was on the side of the road with the engineer, meeting with residents on the road that we were going to be, reconfiguring. So not just a figurehead position. If I have to be there on the side of the road, whether it's raining or snowing, I'm gonna do it. So that's kind of, one example I can think of, John.
Okay. So relative to conflict resolution, sometimes this job has a little bit of conflict to it,
yeah.
that you have to deal with. So tell us, how do you work to resolve, the conflicts and dispute? And provide an example of when you had a polarized issue, and how did you address that, and still able to get everything accomplished?
So one issue that I've been dealing with in my current role is the town manager contract. It was up for renewal in December. I had a split board. So what I did is I laid out, here's what it's going to cost you if you want to hire a new town manager. Here's what it's going to look like if you don't have a town manager. All the things it affects, like your bond rating. I think just having all the information really, it could have been worse, but it was not an ideal situation. 3 months later, the contract is signed. He has a 3-year contract, but it definitely took a lot on my part, a lot of communication with the board, a lot of talking to them, pros and cons of each situation, whether it was to, pursue another contract with the town manager or go in a different direction. What was that going to look like? And what was it going to look like for the town?
So let's talk about the relationship with the board, a little bit going forward. Describe the overall relationship that you would envision working for the select board.
I think communication is key. I think just being really open and transparent. I see my role as, if I was to get this job, is to make sure that the board has all the information to make the best decision possible. So as would handle more of the day-to-day operations, I would still communicate with the board and let them know what's going on.
How would that communications look like?
Whether it be a town administrator report at a meeting, it could be emails individually, it could be phone calls. That's how we do it.
Define a successful relationship between the board and yourself.
I think kind of what I just said. I think being collaborative. I think not just communication, but being collaborative and working together. When I was thinking about applying for this role, that was something that I knew I wanted, because I knew I really wanted to work as a part of a team. And even though the town administrator is the top position, I think I would really look forward to working with, I know there's going to be some transition soon, but with the board and the finance committee, and really doing what's right for the residents. And I think that's why I'm here, and that's why we're all here.
So, what happens when your opinion on a given subject differs from that of the board?
I think trying to lead with not emotional. I think, again, I know not always logic and reason. People have, emotional, reaction to that. Again, I just have facts, have numbers, I don't expect the board to agree with everything that I say or any direction, every single direction that I would want to go in. But I would hope at the end of the day, what we can all agree on is that we want what's best for the residents and the community.
Okay. So you're in a board meeting.
Yeah.
A motion is made to enter executive session, but based on your experience and training, you believe the subject is not exempt, so not allowed to go executive session. How do you handle that?
I think I would, in that moment,
Yes.
I would ask for a recess and I would speak to the chair. And I'd show them the law, the MGL. This is, and I would hope that we would have that communication beforehand to go over the agenda, or at least that's something I would try to do, the Thursday before the meeting is have a meeting and kind of go over the agenda. If they have any questions about, an executive session or something on the agenda, then I could provide feedback at that point. But in that moment, I would ask for a brief recess and I'd talk to the chair.
So, what does your first 90 days on the job look like?
A lot of observing. A lot of, I hate to repeat myself, but meeting with the board individually, meeting with the finance committee, going to the community center, introducing myself to, the seniors, introducing myself to the staff, the residents, if there's any events or functions going on. A lot of observing. I wouldn't come in and just be like, okay, this is the way we're doing things. I'm sure there's a lot of things you guys are doing great. But then I'd go and I'd kind of look for the holes and, where I could bring my expertise, especially policy development. I know those contracts are going to have to get signed, so I know that would be a focus is where are you in terms of your negotiating with the personnel and with the unions.
1 year from now,
Yeah.
you've been the town administrator, and the board's asked you for the first year review. So going into that, what would you state your accomplishments would be 1 year from now? What would you hope your accomplishments would be?
I think I would hope that I would have brought some consistency to the town. I think I would hope I would bring maybe a little bit of different revenue streams for the town. I would hope that I would have. I hope I would have developed great relationships with the school department and with the town elected officials and residents and employees. And I hope that I would be a part of the next chapter for Rutland.
John,
Questions?
I had mentioned that with the pending override and limited resources,
I thought I asked that in one, but I
I think that was,
can pursue, that's when we were talking about not having the staff available. How would you address? Did that not cover enough?
well, I mean, there's a lot going on in the town
Sure.
with the budget cuts and things like that, and very limited resources, so the resources available from the town administrator could be limited.
Yeah.
So, just if you can elaborate a little bit more on being able to deal under those type of
Oh,
circumstances.
sure. I think looking for alternative streams of revenue. And I know, like I said, I heard you talk about grants. I think that's a great place to start. I think also meeting with the state officials, your state rep and state senator, and making sure that they know what's going on with the town financially, so we can be on their radar when they do their budget, or when they, a bill comes up that, they'll be like, oh, well, Rutland. I think also looking at financial trends, like I said, like maybe we're leaving money on the table with Chapter 90, things like that. Where are our deficiencies?
How do you pursue budget cuts? So, if the override doesn't pass,
Right.
I've had it several times in my career where I've had to, address budget cuts. How do you go about setting the system for that?
Very cautiously, and there's going to be a lot of feelings about that, a lot of emotions with that. I think I would start with what's essential and maybe which I hate using. I think we're all essential. But public safety is huge. Infrastructure is huge. And then I'd have to kind of look at what we could live without for maybe a year or 2 or 3 or unfortunately it would be tough. And I wouldn't want to make that alone. It would be consulting with the board and with the finance committee.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
Lee, you all set?
If anybody else has any, I'm just trying to see if I can formulate something.
So I just to elaborate a little bit more on the limited resources. So we had talked about possibly getting some grant support or some
Yeah.
economic. So if we don't have that support, and I know you have experience in that, do you feel you'll be able to absorb some of those responsibilities? Not that the expectation isn't that you could do everything at the same time, but do you
Right.
feel that you'd be able to handle some of those limitations should they arise?
I do have grant writing experience. I have worked on grants like the Community Compact Grant, wellness grants, grants for the veterans monuments in Millbury. So I have done grants, so I could definitely take some of that on for sure.
Thank you. Sure.
I think if I can just dig a little bit deeper into the limited resource piece. So we are a town that does not have our employees are very diverse and kind of, we have a bare bone set of employees. So I think Rutland is accustomed to, and we don't have the structure or the funds to really develop a town administrator that has a whole lot of supports underneath of them, at least not initially. So we need a town administrator that can come in and really be hands-on and doing a lot and not kind of funneling things around to different departments or employees or whatever. And so I think some of the communities that you work in are a little bit, have a little bit more structure or support there, or based with the roles that you have within those communities. So how do you see yourself fitting in with not having a strong, a deep support system to help manage what needs to get done?
That's a great question. Wearing multiple hats, like we talked about. Like I said before, I understand it's not a 9-to-5 job. It's you go home when the job's done, within reason, of course. But I expect to work on a Saturday afternoon. I expect to stay till 6 or 7 o'clock and get the job done. And I think just having those being able to prioritize, I think is huge. And I think I have those skills. I like being busy. I'm not going to be a figurehead. I'm going to get my hands wet. I'm going to get dirty, and I'm going to get the job done.
Anybody have anything else? No?
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Opportunity for one question if you have it.
Sure. I have one comment and then one question. One comment is, it was funny driving in here because I went to first grade right here. There's a building back here, and it's
It was
not
over
there.
there.
Oh, over there? And I was like, I went to school here. Now it's just like this big empty thing.
We did invest a lot of money in that and then tore it down, but that's okay.
My question is, what does your ideal candidate look like?
We'll just go through the board and give any responses.
An ideal candidate, and this is way out there, to be able to do everything what the town needs
Right.
in a good fashion and not dragging feet.
I agree.
And communications, that's the other one. Communications is horrible in this town.
Okay, that's good to know.
Ideal candidate to me is this town doesn't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it's being able to separate what we want and what we need. I think this town has a big problem with that. We have a lot of wants. I just think most of it's not realistic. So I'd like to kind of try and figure out what we need and go forward with that. And hopefully times get better as we go, but.
I think a big issue that's been mine for a long time is human resources. I think there's a huge lack in the town for direction and resources and such for personnel issues. Also is taking advantage of resources. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities out there that the town doesn't take advantage of, and hopefully, we'll get somebody that would jump on that and bring those opportunities to light, and to communicate with different nonprofits and state organizations that can provide support that we're not getting currently. So.
I think for me, these guys all spoke a lot of what my comments are. Also, Rutland's in the process of updating our master plan.
Okay.
And so hopefully having someone that comes in and takes that as a good basis of that's really strong community input, as far as what the community wants, as well as what we as the elected officials want. And sometimes there's some discrepancy there, and so someone that's able to kind of remove themselves enough and sit back and look at the higher level and really where's Rutland going to end up going down this path or how does that fit in the master plan versus what a particular group wants or something like that. So the ability to kind of be in the weeds but also have that 50,000 foot view of everything, and to your point a few times, I think you said take the emotion out of things and just kind of present the facts, and these are the paths that we're choose your own adventure almost path, and so having someone able to do that also.
Okay, so this is an I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. May I just address some of their comments?
Quickly.
Okay, sorry. Just to address, obviously, I have over 5 years experience in human resources, and I've done everything from recruiting, hiring, before, after, during. I am, I know FMLA, workers' comp, civil service. I'm aware of the post requirements. I've done it all when it comes to people. So I just want to make sure that you know that, and I think it'd be a good bang for your buck.
So with that, opportunity for final comments.
I think that in a way you can go home again, because like I said, I did grow up here. I do care about the community, and I think that we can make a difference and make those like you were talking about, and make those hard choices, and hopefully put the town in a really great spot. And it's not going to happen overnight, but I really think that we can do it. And like I said at the beginning, I wouldn't be here wasting your time if I didn't think I was the right person for the job. I know how important it is to get the right person in the position, and I really believe that I could be that consistent, motivating person that could represent the town.
Okay, so the board, as we discussed, there'll be a meeting next week. So there's one board member not here, who will review the tape, and the board will have a discussion next Monday night,
Right.
As to next steps, and I'll be a contact, going forward, and let you know from there where the board stands. So
Great.
again, we want to congratulate you on getting to this level, and certainly want to thank you for your time and putting yourself forward for this position. So.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate
Nice to
it.
meet you.
Thank you. Second candidate? Sometimes I call them contestants.
Come on down.
Exactly.
Gary, all right? Nice to meet you.
Skip Clark.
Nice to meet you.
How you doing? Tom Galvin.
Nice to meet you.
Linda Nichols.
Hi there. Nice to meet you.
Leah Whiteman.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm
Nice to
Tina
meet you.
Murphy. Nice to meet you.
Chief, all right.
And set your seat there. So, Austin, congratulations on being a finalist for the Rutland Town Administrator position, and thank you for joining us this evening. Ahead of the snowstorm, right? So thanks for being here tonight. So you got introduced to the board. Now's the opportunity for you to introduce yourself to the board, and what are you doing here? And why do you want this position, or why are you the right candidate for it?
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, John. I want to first thank the board for having me here tonight. I'm just understanding that the next couple of days are probably strain on your budget, strain on your operations, so appreciate you still sticking to this and obviously sticking with this very important decision. Also want to thank Community Paradigm for your assistance and confidence in putting me forward. And also for those that are here, I see the chief and residents and those who may be watching at home, I want to thank you as well for participating in this process. Obviously, this is an important decision for you, for your community, as you are selecting the next leadership for the community. So just a little bit about myself. I'm a Central Mass guy, born in Worcester, grew up in Gardner, not too far from here, obviously, as you know. I have really committed my career and my interest in public service. It started as political science undergrad at Fitchburg State, and while a freshman, I made the what some called foolish decision, but I think it was a really wise decision to run for the Board of Selectmen in the town of Winchendon, where I was living at the time. And that provided an opportunity to really gain a solid understanding of municipal government, local government. I think it's the most important form of government for the people. So I was elected and re-elected the following year, where I served 4 years, and I was proud to represent the community on various issues like public transportation, regional planning, financial best practices. We implemented our very first financial policies in the town. But also, we did a very similar, we made a similar decision like what you guys are doing tonight. We had to select a town manager. So that was one of our very first tasks as a select board member. Recognizing you can't necessarily make a career out of being a selectman, right? I decided that municipal government was what I wanted to do for a career. So after finishing my term and finishing my undergraduate education, moved to Worcester and looked for opportunities to gain skills to eventually become a town administrator, town manager someday. So I worked for a company called ClearGov. They're a financial transparency company. I know actually the chief talked about ClearGov the other day at your meeting for some budget software that they make. And then I also worked for Governor Baker's re-election campaign that gave me a network of folks in the state administration. And then finally ended up in the town manager's office in the town of Acton, where I currently serve as Director of Intergovernmental Affairs. It's really been a training ground, if you will, for preparing me for a role like town administrator. I've worked on virtually everything that comes to the town manager's office in the town of Acton. And I really do think all that, combined with my education, my experience, and my interest in central Massachusetts, makes me a good candidate for this role.
So now, I know I have had to ask, what the heck is a Director of Intergovernmental Relations? So maybe why don't you just discuss that a little bit more for the board?
Sure, yeah. So a lot of cities and towns, I think, are recognizing that succession planning and folks that are interested in local government is a challenge. A lot of town managers are coming up with roles like a Director of Intergovernmental Affairs or a budget analyst, positions that kind of prepare folks that are getting out of graduate school or folks that are interested in local government to get the skills that are necessary to take that next step to a role like town administrator. If you look at my job description, it's very similar to an assistant town administrator, assistant town manager role. Again, I work on virtually everything, whether it's the budget, collective bargaining, policy planning, making. So it's a role that kind of is broad, but also I'm able to, I oversee the transportation services in the community, which is a core service in the community. So essentially act as a department or division head there, preparing the budget, staffing, things like that. So, but ultimately I do work in the town manager's office. And I think the most important part of a job description, I think, is other duties as assigned. And I've definitely had a lot of that, especially through the pandemic, and I'm sure we'll be able to talk about that a little bit more.
So how would you work with the board in understanding the vision of the board for the town? And what do you see as your role in that process, as well as setting a path for implementation?
Sure. So I think, as a former board member as well, I think one of the most important things, especially after the election, when a new board is formed, is working with the administrator, the manager, to set goals for the upcoming year. I think that's critical for a community and critical for me as the administrator to assess how I'm doing from a performance level, and for the board to assess how I'm doing as well from a performance perspective. So we work collaboratively. Typically, it's during the summer, right? An opportunity to do a goal-setting retreat, if you will, to kind of take some time to look at what are the needs of the community. Some communities do a community feedback sort of session for that. They solicit feedback from the community for ideas, town staff, ideas for ways to make improvements over the next year, and we set goals together. And then we work through those goals during the year, and whether it's through routine updates to the board about this is how I'm progressing on a certain issue or a certain goal that you've implemented, or through department head updates, having regular attendance from department heads, because obviously a lot of the goals will be also implemented by department heads. And then at the end of the year, typically is a performance review opportunity for me. And that's an opportunity for us to take a look at, what's the work that we've accomplished during the previous year. Things that maybe were a little bit more challenging, things that we can make some improvements on, and then we reassess that as we go through the next goal setting process.
So the board is in consensus that leadership skills are critical, in this hire, particularly with the community having to move forward after facing some issues that have been divisive. They're talking overrides, at this point. What skills and approach will you bring to the table to address this?
Yeah, so I think especially when there's, some challenge, I obviously recognize that there's, like a lot of cities and towns, we've got some budget challenges here in the community. I watched that meeting the other day. That was a challenging discussion, I think, to have. The joint meeting with the FinCom. Talking about override and potential implications on if the override doesn't pass. That's a significant strain on the operations, on the morale of employees. I can only imagine, what that feels like to not know, what the future holds. So I think with something like this, a role like this, you really need effective and solid communication skills. Right, you really need to set a solid communications plan. I think for the community, whether it's using, and I know Tamika, the town administrator's office, you do a tremendous job. Getting as much as you can out on social media, on the website, email. I would continue that, but also I have some other avenues that I've used in the town of Acton. We do a monthly newsletter that I publish called the Municipal Monthly in Acton, but that's an opportunity to get a lot of information out there. We include that in a quarterly tax bill, which is actually included in the cost of the tax bill, which a lot of communities don't know. So it's essentially a free, quote unquote free, right? You're still paying for the tax bill. But it's a free 2-page opportunity to get information out to the residents, and that goes to every tax bill household in the community. We've used that for a lot of important messaging. So we were looking to build a new fire station, a new school. That was an opportunity to talk about the project and provide facts about the project to people. So communications I would love to build on, and I'm sure we can talk about that a little bit more, but also collaboration. I think the community is not successful, and if I just operate as an I, it's a team. We really need to find ways to work together, to collaborate, provide efficiencies. Also looking at ways to partner with neighboring communities. I know you already do that with your regional dispatch. I think there's some other opportunities there that we can certainly take a look at. I think there's also obviously a lot of incentives that are coming from the state on collaboration or regionalization efforts. So I really do think I'm really good at bringing folks together, and I would look to do that through an effective communication and collaboration style.
So there's been some changes in this position here. So it's been some turnover in other positions. What type of leadership skills are needed? And what would you do to create the team approach going forward?
Yeah, so I think you have to encourage collaboration on as much as you can, whether it's, and we do a lot of sort of working groups, if you will, on a lot of grant opportunities, because I, as the town administrator, certainly am not the subject matter expert on water, sewer, police, but I still want to provide a leadership opportunity for us to come together and see if we can find ways to innovate and provide a solid grant application for you all for particular, mass works or whatever it is. There's a lot of opportunities out there. So I think the working group model is a great model that has been successful in the town of Acton. Certainly led some of those working groups. We had an opera working group. I lead the social media working group in Acton, and that brings folks from diverse backgrounds in the community. So we have folks from the library, police department, all over that are able to bring us kind of a different vision, because I may have a certain idea for a social media post, for example, or for ways to do some ARPA messaging, but through the working group model we're able to bring sort of a broad viewpoint of opinions and skills to the table. So that's what I would do.
So you live in the area, and you know Rutland a little bit. So given its size, location, demographics, what do you consider the key issues here?
Yeah, so I know Rutland a lot. Actually, I've spent a lot of time in Rutland, and Rutland, very much reminds me of the town of Winchendon, right? It was a community that, does not have direct access to highways, for example. Had industry such as obviously the Rutland Heights property was an industry at one point that provided a lot of, jobs for the community. And since then, through no fault of our own, right, there's been changes. So I think a community like Rutland and Winchendon is looking to, really think about its identity and find sort of Rutland 2.0, if you will, while still preserving the the character of the community, recognizing some of the assets. I view Rutland very similar to Winchendon in the way that it has a lot of recreational assets that I think should be promoted and marketed. So if you want to talk about from like an economic development strategy, how many people go down to Rutland State Park? How many people use the rail trail? Those are people that could be coming into town and coming to our restaurants. So let's promote that to potential developers or restaurateurs, if you will. Obviously, in some of your plans, you've identified a need for, whether a small shopping mart or market, if you will, for folks. I think the closest one is like Big Y, probably, right? I think there's plenty of opportunities to be creative in the way that you, think about Rutland 2.0, if you will, and that's certainly not my phrase. Actually, you can take it if you want. It may not be a good phrase. But, especially as you're traveling, I know Rutland Heights, obviously the deal just closed and, that's a significant development. But I think that there's certainly opportunities for managed growth that is still within what Rutland wants to be as a community. And that's, something that a lot of small communities are dealing with. Certainly you're not going to get a Walmart. You probably don't want Walmart here because they would totally change the aesthetic and character of the community. But I think thoughtful, managed development, I think would really kind of help put Rutland back on the map. But I think you already have a great community with a lot of assets. You have great people, you have great town staff. Let's find ways to be creative and promote that in a positive way to get people back in town.
So Rutland relies on a depth of its citizen volunteers, as so many smaller communities do. How do you work to build trust, with them, so that there's a solid relationship between staff and volunteers?
Yeah. So I know in Acton we have a lot of town staff that are sort of serve as liaisons, if you will, to a lot of committees. Obviously that can kind of push on the bandwidth that you have for some town staff members that are already spending a lot of time. But I think encouraging folks to town staff, if possible, to be engaged in committees that are related to their particular department. I think just showing up, right, whether it's me or whether it is someone else from town staff showing up to boards and committee meetings, other community events. I think for me, I look forward to continue being a presence. I'm already there as just a citizen. I think I would continue to do that if I were chosen to be your next town administrator. Putting a face to the name, if you will. So I'm not just the person that's sitting in the office, being present in the community. I think that encourages trust and people realizing that they can come to town hall and they can talk to the administrator about a particular issue if they have a question. So. Just certainly being involved, but also, again, I think communication is critical. So really encouraging not only myself through the town administrator's office, but encouraging all departments to get as much information out there as possible and communicating with folks. Also, I think being reliable, whether it's folks that reach out to the office, whether it's through email, phone. In Acton, we have no more than 24-hour response policy to citizens' questions or concerns. Obviously, if it's Friday afternoon and you may be busy, you may get back Monday morning, but a lot of times we're not. A lot of times we are responding on the weekend. But you certainly don't want folks to feel as if their local government is not being responsive. So that's another thing too that I think ensures trust in the community. And always providing the facts as much as you can, and informing them as much as possible about the situation or proposal that you're trying to put forward.
When you opened, you hinted at your role of financial, the financial role, financial management. Give us a little bit more depth. What is your role in the budget planning process and the financial planning?
Yeah, so I've been involved, again, in all aspects of finance in Acton. I mentioned obviously some of the policies that we put forward in Winchendon as well. But in Acton specifically, I have to prepare the town of Acton's transportation budget, but also I'm involved in the greater budget, municipal operations budget. So the budget document, if you go to the town of Acton website, I've prepared, so I've included and expanded that budget to include 5 years of financial information. So we now look back 3 years of actuals. I develop and I maintain the long-term financial model that we have. So we go out 5 years currently. That's something I would love to introduce to the town of Rutland as well. Recognizing some of the questions about or challenges, questions potentially about an override. Obviously, we need to inform folks. I think a long-term model is an effective way to do that. In our budget, we also have a 10-year capital plan that I assist with maintaining. So those budget and capital plan meetings all go respectively with the departments, and we talk about their budget requests, we talk about their capital needs, and then we work to develop a plan that is the budget. I've also been involved in the audit process. So obviously the required annual audit, I've been involved in that as well. And one thing that I'm very proud to talk about from a financial transparency, I developed a new report for the town of Acton called the Popular Annual Financial Report. It's essentially a condensed audit. Because recognizing that an audit is like 50 pages and it's not light reading per se, what I did was I took the audit and I condensed it to 4 or 5 pages, talking about the long-term or the pretty much an overview of revenues, expenditures, some of our indicators like our OPEB position, our pension position, our annual budget growth rate, and then I introduced this year the capital initiatives. So this is a great way, and we're including this in our town warrant. We're putting this on all of our communications venues to inform folks about the financial health of their community. I think that ensures, again, to your question about trust, I think that ensures trust for the financial well-being of their community by informing them of the financial condition of their community. And I'm proud to say that this was actually nationally recognized by the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, for best practices. That's something I would look to bring from a financial best practice. That's something I believe in. I would look to introduce and bring to you folks. So finance, I can go on. I won't, because it's my favorite thing about local government. I know it's dry, but that's something that I'm passionate about and I really believe in from a best practice standpoint, especially because it's so critical.
So finances are difficult here right now. You've been in Acton where finances are, probably in a little bit better condition. What would you bring to the table here? You've talked about a few things you've done, but how do you come in and immerse yourself in the budget process here and bring that type of quality to here?
Yeah. So I think everything I just mentioned. First and foremost, I would first need to really kind of get into the weeds with the select board, finance committee, town department to really understand the situation that we have from the budget. I think you can only get so much from a select board meeting or the FinCom meetings. While there's a lot of information there, I think there's still some questions. I did take a look at previous budget documents to see and then try to scheme out what the situation would look like in FY24 or future years. But I would certainly need to do that and would love to do that. As well, developing a comprehensive budget book to publish to the community as well. An overall budget book that allows for departments to bring their missions, their services, any data that they have respective to their department. So that shows trends, for example, about the service levels, things like that. FTE counts. So a comprehensive budget book that I've developed and improved in Acton, I would look to bring here. I mentioned the long-term model. I know you already have a long-term capital plan that obviously is inclusive. So compiling all that and some of the other tools, whether it's a PAFR or other financial strategies or tools that I've helped develop, I would look to bring to Rutland. Also, I think you got to start the budget process early. You're looking at revenues, you're looking at expenditures. So developing very early on, probably during our goal-setting session, working with you and the Finance Committee to develop an overall schedule for the fiscal year. So there's an expectation from the board, for myself, Finance Committee, and the community. Okay, on November 12th, I'm going to present the revenue projections for the community. While they may be early, these are projections. We'll get state aid in a couple of months. Then we'll look at some other factors, local receipts, things like that, see how those are trending. I think that's another best practice that I would look to bring to the community.
So, hypothetical here, a local resident, at town meeting stands up and proceeds at length to lecture the citizens of the town on the various town functions that he or she feels are wasteful and extravagant. Through their force of personality, this citizen riles up the meeting and they are bound and determined to slash funding to programs you believe are vital. How do you deal with that situation?
Yeah, so I think before town meeting, so before this, and I'll definitely answer that question, but before town meeting, I think it's prudent to have almost sort of pre-town meeting meetings. These are informational sessions for the board, finance committee, school committee, and residents to get an understanding, and allows that gentleman or that person to maybe air those out maybe before town meeting as well, because some of that may not be rooted totally in truth. So that is a venue and an opportunity for for that dialogue to occur before the legislative body meets, right? That pre-town meeting would also include enacting. We do recorded presentations that are played not only at that meeting, but also they're played again at town meeting. So these recorded presentations, give all the information as much as possible for that particular article. So if it's an override, so if it's the schools, so if it's the capital article, we're presenting all the information. Now at town meeting, obviously, I want to make sure that the boards are all prepared with as much information as possible. So whether it's me responding or it's the board responding, giving as much information about that article. There might be some things that, points that are brought up at the meeting that maybe we didn't think about, and we'll respond as much as we, with as much fact as we can in response to those particular shared concerns. And some of them may be valid, but again, I think you have to be strategic even before town meeting, getting all the information out there, so the boards and town meeting is fully informed. And sometimes I think I got this a little bit, maybe from being a selectman. Sometimes, as you know, it's really hard to please everyone. And I've had many opportunities where I think I've tried to, really sort of, I hate to use this expression, talk someone off the ledge, in terms of, they're so bound on their opinion that sometimes it's really difficult to get them back. But that's not to say that we can't, try as hard as possible to give them and make them fully informed as a town meeting member. And their points are valid. So thanking them for their perspective, and if that means that we have to go back and rethink things, I'm okay as well with falling on my sword if I have to.
Okay, let's get you out of your fun zone and talk about HR. So what are the key issues in HR today that you think need to be addressed?
What's interesting is on the MMA website, you are seeing a tremendous turnover in roles across the organization, whether it's town administrator, equipment laborers, police officers, patrolmen. I think that creates a necessity for a succession plan. Every community is experiencing the difficult labor market that we have now. So when you were looking for a town administrator, or Acton just lost their top 3 finance officials, finance director, town accountant, and principal assessor, all within a month. So we were fortunate that we were kind of seeing that coming. So we did, do some succession planning in the finance department to kind of build up folks and train them to kind of take that next step up through professional development and opportunity to transfer folks who may have the necessary skills or abilities to carry out those roles. So I think working with the departments to identify ways that we can build a succession plan for all aspects of the organization is one thing. Looking at ways to strengthen or improve or implement, if where possible, policies and procedures. So having a personnel administration plan, having all the required HR documents like the technology use, things like that, best practices for HR, bringing those into the community as well. And then also, you have to always constantly look at recruitment and retention strategies. So are you doing a routine assessment of your job descriptions? Are you doing a routine assessment of your wage scales to make sure that you're properly compensating folks for the work that they're doing? Or does their job description match the work that they're actually doing? All of that is important and is required on a daily basis from myself, departments, to make sure that the organization is operating smoothly from an HR perspective.
When hiring, what 3 skills are important to you when you're hiring somebody into a position?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate to participate in a lot of the hiring processes in the town of Acton, from finance director, interim finance director, equipment laborer, patrol, police officers, firefighters. What I look for as I'm assessing candidates are obviously relevant skills and experience. What does their background look like, and how does that match what we're looking for from a job advertisement, from the job description perspective? I also think it's important to have a strong cultural fit. Does this person have an enthusiasm to work for the town of Rutland? What kind of research have they done on the town of Rutland? I want to make sure that this is a good fit, not only for myself as the town administrator, managing and overseeing the employees, but with the department heads, with the town staff, making sure that folks are comfortable with particular candidates for the organization. But also, I think in this day and age, you need employees who are adaptable and flexible. Public service, as you know, is ever changing. I think the past few years have really demonstrated that for us. Just to give you reference, I served as an assistant town clerk during the pandemic in Acton. Never thought that would happen, but I did it. So I would look for skills like that. Also, I want folks that are willing to grow, willing to take professional development opportunities, willing to kind of challenge themselves and make sure that they are the best that they can be from an employment standpoint. I think that really encourages good employees. From a productivity standpoint, I think that makes the organization better and the morale of the organization better as well.
Talk about a difficult personnel situation you had to address with an employee, and how did you get it resolved?
Yeah, so I oversee communications assistants in the Human Services building, which is essentially our senior center, our nursing service, Veteran Services office, and one of the challenges that we had was sort of clash of personalities. Now, that's not to say that we're expecting everyone to be best friends or agree on everything, but we had some clashing personalities that created a challenging situation from a working situation standpoint. And what we found, candidly, after conversations with the employees that I oversee and the other employees that are in the building and we're dealing with that particular situation, what we found was they just weren't talking to each other really, right? They weren't really listening to each other either. So for example, right, you go to the senior center and the front desk was empty because they didn't communicate, hey, I'm going on lunch. So then naturally that created stress. Hey, I got a complaint that the front desk is empty, things like that. So, one easy tool that we implemented was let your colleagues know where you're going. If you're going for lunch, if you're going to another person's office and you're going to be away from your desk, That also allowed us to create the idea of a kind of just a shared schedule. So not only let them know when you're going to another office or lunch, let them know when you're on vacation maybe. So if they're relying on you for something, they know where you are. And then also just encouraging, and now they have standard, sort of department meetings, if you will, interdepartmental meetings to kind of talk about what's going on at the Human Services building. So nursing service is going to have a career fair, if you will, for the nursing service. So that means that they're using this room. COA, don't book the room during that time because it's going to be used. So just really it came down to communication. So that was just, one kind of situation that had we not intervened and found ways to make improvements, that was a challenging situation that I think wouldn't have been fun for any of the employees.
So here, you obviously, took in some of the meetings, that were taking place here, so you understand that the financial situation, that's occurring here. And even before this situation, staff was, at, minimum levels, to begin with. Now, this is probably more of a, when you were in Winchendon, but you were a select board member there, not a staff member.
Right.
But in Acton, you've got resources, there's various people. Coming into this position, how do you adjust, to coming into this position where there is no HR director, there's no economic development director, there's no, staffing is, you turn around to look for help, and there's Tamika, after that, it's pretty empty. How do you adjust to that?
Yeah, no, certainly I want to give all the credit to Tamika. I see she's everywhere. Every meeting that I watch, I see her in the corner taking minutes or representing the administrator or the town on various issues. So I don't know how you do it, but whole credit to you. That's, I think, a challenge that I think we even have it in Acton.
But how do you address this coming into this position?
Yeah. So, certainly I think as an administrator, I think obviously there's a lot that I'm responsible for. So at the end of the day, we still have to, make sure the HR protocols are followed. So I'll certainly have to, do as much as I can to make sure that those responsibilities are carried out. But also I want to, look at opportunities for professional growth from other employees as well. Some employees may totally be interested in collective bargaining, for example. So that was an example of me. I mentioned to the town manager in Acton, I want to sit at the table. So that he started bringing me, and I participated in all the collective bargaining sessions. So bringing employees and empowering them to be involved in things that they may not typically be involved in. I think that also encourages trust in them to make sure that they're cross-trained, if you will, within all aspects of local government. But also I think, and I mentioned a little bit, I think there's opportunities to partner on some things. I've seen some innovative solutions on, I've seen some communities out west that are partnering on an HR director. Obviously HR is a big component in every municipality, so through a community compact grant, they're able to get a regionalization grant to fund the first year salary for a shared HR director between some communities. There's also some software out there that I think can help with a lot of these things as well. Technology is one thing that I'm big on utilizing to make efficiencies in the organization. So I think that there's opportunities for to make efficiencies and improvements, whether it's partnering technology or again looking for staff who have an interest and want to grow.
So along that type of line, let's say IT, so there's no IT director. So how do you go about assessing the situation and making sure that IT is protected and so on going forward?
Yeah, so I know that you have you contract out your IT services, I believe now. That's certainly a model that a lot of communities are going towards. IT is an expensive initiative for sure. Even just looking now with there's software licenses and subscriptions for everything, right? Music, documents. So I can only imagine when you're thinking about the whole IT infrastructure for a community. There's also a lot of grant opportunities and regionalization initiatives as well on IT. So you mentioned making sure that the the network or from a cybersecurity standpoint that you're secure. There's regional planning initiatives that actually look at that, and they it's essentially a technical assistance grant program. They'll come in and they'll look at your technology needs, your cybersecurity status, if you will, and they'll provide opportunities for improvement there, but they'll also identify some resources out there that you can apply for. So I would look to take advantage of any free opportunity that I have, whether it's from regional government, state government, federal government, you name it. I've applied for it, and I've been fortunate to receive a lot of those opportunities and assistance from our partners.
You've touched upon communications, going through here, but I just want to make sure you've had the opportunity, to discuss also. How would you increase communications internally, and externally, including use of technologies and, new communication methods?
Yeah, so internally, let's say just starting with staff, for example, you got to have the standard department head meetings to make sure that all departments are informed and make sure that they're just apprised of things that are going on at the select board level, town administrator level, making sure that the town administrator and the select board know about things that are going on in other departments, information sharing. I'd also think it's a good model to have sort of sub-department head meetings as well. That allows me to get a little bit more in depth with public safety, for example, or public works, or the library. Allows me to be fully informed of the operations of my colleagues. Select board, I have to have a relationship from a communications perspective with all of you. I would seek to understand what your desired communication style is. I had some fellow select board members that they didn't do email, but for some reason they were great texters. So they always text our town manager. Some are email, some are, yeah, I know. I'm not even a good texter. Some, have standing, coffee meetings with the town manager, town administrator. So I would look to establish that early with each of you, and I'll stick to that. But also on the big things, right? Every time that there's, unfortunately, we have an accident or something in the community, the town manager in Acton will always send out a blip, just a quick blast, whether it's email or texting if you want. Hey, this happened. Because I know as a select board member, I was not a fan of being the last person to know about something, right? How many times I was in CVS and I'd say, hey, or someone would say, hey, did you hear about this? No, I should talk to the town manager. That won't happen with me. You will be the first to know as soon as I know. But also I encourage, obviously, you to have a relationship with your neighbors and share that information with me, because as much as I want to be, sort of ears to the ground, if you will, on things that are going on in the community, sometimes that's difficult. So as much as I share the information with you, I'd love for you to be able to share that with me as well. And then also I touched on some of the initiatives with the greater public, right? The newsletter. We are big fans of the Newsflash, which is essentially an email listserv, if you will, for the community. So that's where we send out everything about town meeting or a new committee opening. We'll publish that on our town website, and that goes to everyone that's subscribed to that newsletter. Social media obviously is a big thing, so looking to continue using that, improving on that, cross-sharing a lot of information. But also, I'm a fan, and I'm a regular attendee of the lunches at the Council on Aging or programs and sessions at the library. I think that's an opportunity for me as the administrator to get out there in the community and let folks know that things that are going on. Town manager in Acton has something called Java with John. I'd have to think about something creative, something with Austin. We'll think about that. We'll come up with that. But also, I mentioned again attending community events. So 4th of July. Setting up a table for the town of Rutland with information about things that are going on, encouraging staff to participate as well in all these events. I'll be out there in the community. I want to be there because an informed community makes my job easier, makes your job easier, and is just overall, I think, a better community when they're more informed.
Talk about some interactions with citizens, both positive, negative, that you've had over time.
Yeah, so I also have a very public-facing role, so I am out in the community and acting a lot, so I get to engage with a lot of residents in the community. My role also, I serve as the liaison to the Commission on Disabilities in Acton and the Transportation Advisory Committee, so I have standing regular monthly meetings with those folks as well. But, you know, I really was, it was a joy to be the acting assistant town clerk during the pandemic, right? When there's questions about mail-in voting, how do we do this, what's going on, this is all new. We have to limit the amount of voters that are going in the room, so there, you can imagine I spent a lot of time in line with residents talking about various things, and they know that I work in the town manager's office. So of course they're gonna ask me questions about things that are going on. Hey, you know, what's happening here? So I've had a lot of positive experiences with residents. I think, you know, I think a lot of folks like to see. I think I bring an enthusiasm about local government, and I think folks like to see, you know, the sort of that positive enthusiasm about the services that we provide. Happy to share as much information as possible. Again, adhering always to that follow-up rule. So if we're in line at the early voting and someone asks me a question, I'll give them my card or ask them to write down their number, and I'll get back to them with some information. I really enjoy those interactions. Obviously, you mentioned some are more challenging than others, but I always treat everyone with respect and dignity, and you know, ultimately will provide them the information or the same level of customer service and respect across the board.
So when you became a selectman, was it a polarizing time, you know, in which then you know, you follow where they were almost taken over by the state, you know, in essence, and had to come in and fix things. So that was a polarizing time. How did you address the conflict that was happening, you know, within the community?
Yeah, so there was a challenging time. To give you reference, imagine if this happened in Rutland, that all 5 members were brand new, never been selected before. The whole board was replaced. Unfortunately, one of my fellow board members had indicated during the campaign that the first thing they're going to do is they're going to clear house of all the town staff and town department heads. So the first thing I did after being sworn in is I go to all the department heads and I say, just so you know, such selectmen speak for themselves. I think you're doing good work here. I really want to maintain a positive relationship and see how we can move forward in a positive manner. You know, the past is behind us and we're finding ways that we can improve. So I find best just going to folks, talking to them, understanding their situation, where they're coming from, and how I can assist them, whether it was as a selectman or whether it's my current role, or I carry that personally. If I see someone that is struggling or confused about something, it's in my nature to help them or assist them where I can. And that's where I look to bring in this role as well. And just being, again, a constant presence for folks, that they know that, forgive me for saying this, Administrator Caggiano is there for them, can answer their questions, and wants to do this for them.
So addressing the board at this point, talk about the relationship, you know, between you as the town administrator, you know, and the board. You know, how do you develop that? How do you envision that working?
Yeah, so I think I touched on a little bit with respect to communications, you know, but I think just overall my relationship with you, I think one of my first things would be asking to schedule a one-on-one meeting with each of you to understand, you know, what you're passionate about, what are your interests, what are your concerns, any ideas that you have, what you're hearing from the community, because all that will essentially allow me to develop an action plan, if you will, for you know, my first 100 days, my first year, my term, my tenure overall as an administrator, and making sure that I'm responsive to you. I mentioned the communications. Obviously, if we have our standing meetings, hopefully we're able to do that and kind of talk about, you know, what's going on in the community. If you have any questions about projects, that's something I would do as well. Again, I think even more so, that 24 response time to residents, it's probably even more so with my bosses. I want you to be as informed as possible. If you have questions, I will immediately, you know, as soon as I can, get back to you with I don't know the answer, but I'll get it for you. Or if I have the answer, or if I have to loop in a department head to give you the answer, you know, that's what I would do. You know, and I just overall, I did mention obviously that you know your community much better than I ever will. Some of you have grown up here, you've lived here for years, this is something that you're passionate about, and I will always respect that. And I will bring my best self forward every day, understanding that you're here for a reason, you're passionate about your local government, and I want to bring the skills that I have forward to be responsive and advance those things that are truly important to you.
What happens if your opinion is different from the board?
Yeah, that's always a challenge, right? You know, first I think, let's just say, for example, you were going towards a decision that maybe maybe had a fundamental disagreement with. First, I'd want to understand the information that you have. So I certainly want to ask questions and seek to develop a deeper understanding of maybe what is leading you or what led you to that decision. I think also my goal would be to provide any sort of information that maybe you don't have, to make sure that you're even more informed. And if you still decide ultimately that that's the decision that you have to make or have made, ultimately I'm an agent of the board. That's what a town administrator is. They're the chief administrative officer that serves as an agent of the board, so I would respect your decision, and we'd move forward as best possible, making sure that they still conform with legal and professional standards that I have set for myself. But ultimately, we have a relationship that's rooted in professionalism and respect.
So what if during a board meeting, a motion is made to enter executive session, but based on your experience and training, you believe the subject is not exempt from the open meeting law? How do you handle that?
Yeah, open meeting law, especially executive session privileges, are something that I think, from a state government standpoint, they could do a lot better job making sure that folks are fully informed about what exactly applies for executive session. So while we do have the open meeting law trainings, I think sometimes the you know, the exemptions that are there sometimes feel vague if you are looking into a particular topic. I would give my again, within professionalism and respect, I would say respectfully, I don't, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure we can enter into executive session. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit more, or ask if it's possible to defer to a future meeting for allow us to seek outside advice, perhaps just ask counsel or ask the Attorney General's office if that particular idea for executive session was applicable. But of course, the will of the board is the will of the board. If you enter into executive session, I'm not a select board member, I can't vote on that. So certainly while I would be required to participate and would participate if possible, I'd want to make sure that you're informed before making that decision though.
So let's say it's a year from now, and you're the town administrator, and the board asks you to give a report as to what were your accomplishments in your first year. What would you like to say?
Thank you for employing me, first of all. Yeah, no, so I think, again, those goals are huge. I think, again, those are performance measures for me as the administrator. So first and foremost, let's go and talk about the goals. Let's see what we were successful on, and let's see maybe, again, that what was a little bit more challenging and things that we weren't able to be successful on. But also, looking at other accomplishments, not only of myself, but also the organization. Town departments do a lot of good things, whether it's you know, seeking grant opportunities and achieving grant opportunities, or they put on a really good you know, COA lunch, or the library did some really good programming. The success of, you know, town staff and employees and the overall town, I think ideally would help in my evaluation as well. And let's talk about it, and let's just be candid about the year, things that I thought that were successful and things that I personally maybe would like to make improvements on. But you know, first and foremost, let's talk about the goals. maybe if we were, if we knocked them out of the park, we could be a little bit more ambitious and you can challenge me a little bit more. I'd love that. A challenge is something that I look forward to and I'm enthusiastic to get after. But then also that's an opportunity for you as the board to provide constructive feedback, hopefully to me, whether it is about my performance or about the organization overall. And that informs me as the administrator for ways that I can make improvements, or ways, especially if it's positive feedback, ways that I can bring that to the rest of the community and to town staff and let them know things that the board felt that they did well.
So you had 4 years as a selectman in Winchendon, and then you got into a full-time position. You've been almost 4 years in Acton. What's your life looking like going forward?
Well, I'll tell you, unlike my good friend, I don't plan to run for mayor. Candidly, I think the board and I are aligned on this one thing. I think the board is looking for stability, and for myself, I'm also looking for stability. I know I'm young, but I'm at an age where I'm looking to settle down. I'd really like to start a family, hopefully soon. And I think that this would be a good opportunity for me to really continue growing professionally, take myself to the next level, and provide some stable leadership for the community. Again, I will work my butt off for the town of Rutland. I will put as much enthusiasm as I can forward, best practices, innovation. I'll try my best for the town. And I think stability of leadership is something that a town like Rutland, a lot of these towns that are experiencing a lot of this transition needs. And I'd look to provide that and bring a lot of exciting things to the town, maybe things that we haven't even thought about before.
Questions from the board?
I'm good.
I just had a quick question.
Sure.
Full disclosure, I grew up in Acton.
I know that.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and Acton was much like Rutland is now when I grew up, believe it or not, and it exploded. So we're looking for opportunities of revenue, but I don't think we want to become an Acton.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts in developing the community but still retaining its rural character?
Yeah, and you're right. Certainly, I after my research of especially Acton, when I was looking into Acton, you think of some of the corridors. They were it was like a farm town.
Mm.
It really was. And now, especially Route 2A, which was all farms at one point, Great Road. Now it's a commercial corridor. There's apartment complexes, major businesses that are on that corridor. So my first question was, what happened? Why? And candidly, I think what happened in Acton was, which is different than what I think you folks have done, is there was not really a strategy about growth, right? So zoning was not consistent. That allowed for that corridor like Great Road 2A to become, people are calling it almost sort of like the mega mile is not the right word, but dealerships, speeding, everything, right? It's a busy corridor. But you folks are doing that, right? Through thoughtful development. You obviously understand that you have the growth management study that you were looking at. You have other planning studies like the town center study. You have obviously the town planner and the economic development office that are thinking about this, and the boards and committees that are thinking about how do we still look for growth, whether it's business or revenue, but also preserving the character and the rich assets that you have. So I'd look to continue building on that and doing that. I think obviously studies, the worst thing that you can do is pay all this money or get a free grant for a study and then you put it on a shelf and then 5 years from now you say, oh, I think we have to update that study now. So making sure that those are always rooted in your strategies, whether it's budget or proposals to town meeting, using those studies and that information and the feedback from the community and the boards and committees that are tasked with carrying out some of those charges or those recommendations, using all of that to inform how you move forward as a community. And you've already done a lot of really good work on that. So I'd love to build on that and work with you folks to I understand you're working through the next phase of updating your open space and recreation plan and the master plan. So this is, I think, a good time as well for an administrator to come in and work with you to work on that. But certainly the zoning has been a tremendous challenge for communities over the past. In Acton, it was 2 decades of tremendous residential growth. And now Acton is an MBTA community, so we have that MBTA community, those zoning requirements for multifamily housing that are coming in, and we're trying to figure out how to be responsive to that as well. Housing choice community legislation, everything that's coming down from the state, some of these unfunded mandates that are coming, how are we responsive to obviously the needs of the community, but making sure it fits in, again, like I mentioned earlier, what Rutland wants Rutland to look like in the future.
I'm just going to hit you on the other spectrum. So Winchendon has been a fairly depressed community. So what kind of opportunities were you able to bring into them to try to help address some of those issues?
Yeah, so Winchendon is an interesting town because it almost sort of acts as a feeder to New Hampshire. So we have 140 where folks are getting off of Route 2 and cutting up through Gardner, Winchendon to get up to New Hampshire to go shopping or something. So we do have a lot of folks that are coming through. So we identified some commercial corridors that I think were more prone to commercial development. So I did represent the community on the Planning Commission and then Transportation Committee. So the Regional Transportation Committee. So advocating for funding for those corridors for infrastructure improvements, water, sewer. So the town of Winchendon did have, I don't know if you know the company Milec and McCockey Equipment. So they were a long-time company in an old mill building in Winchendon, and they were looking to leave. Right, the building was falling apart, but through those identified improvements that we made to infrastructure, and the town did use a tool, tax increment financing agreement. It was a 20-year agreement with Milec to keep those jobs and keep that company in town. They made an investment in a new building. They built 2 outside deck hockey rinks. Now that they host regional tournaments, actually I think it's even more than regional tournaments. So that's bringing folks into town. They're eating at the restaurants. They're they're going to the local stores that we have. Another opportunity that I'll just quickly talk about. I read in an article in the Boston Globe talking about some of these downtowns that you mentioned, like Winchendon, that was experiencing sort of a depressed, very depressed from what it used to be. But the headline was "Beer is Saving Downtowns." It was interesting, right? And they used Hudson as an example. You think of the Rail Trail Brewery that's downtown. It brings a lot of folks into downtown for their other shops that they have. So the town of Winchendon had an old building in town next to a bowling alley. All these buildings were old and closed and they're about to shut down. The town received a federal brownfields remediation grant to clean up the site, and Bullspit Brewery has indicated that they're coming to town, and they're building a brewery in town. So that's an example of ways that we can identify ways to make improvements to a site, for example, to attract businesses at no cost to the local taxpayers, using free money from the federal government to clean up a site to incentivize economic development. One thing as well, I know town of Rutland they did approve cannabis in town. Acton actually has a zoning moratorium on cannabis, so we do not have that as well. So, but that is another business that does bring people into town. It may be briefly, but it brings them into town for whatever reason. The city of Gardner, I thought, they were smart. They put their cannabis dispensary right between a Wendy's, a KFC, and Friendly's. And a liquor store.
Why'd they do that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's all kinds of opportunities, whether it's public-private tools that you can take advantage of to incentivize, whether it's residents or people, business owners to come into town as well.
Thank you.
If I may.
Leah?
This kind of piggybacks on Lyndon's previous question, I think. But what's your kind of relationship or view on relationship with the state, like our state level legislature, and even somewhat the federal level? Just to your point about seeking out some of those grant opportunities or funding opportunities for those targeted projects, and I guess. We know that you have the experience with the Polito Baker re-election campaign and everything. That was a few years ago, and kind of your dynamic now and looking forward.
Yeah, so what was great about working for the re-election campaign is a lot of those folks that I worked with ended up working in the administration. So I had a lot of contacts that were working across the organization, and some of them still do. They're working in some of these agencies, but I have developed, I think, really great relationships with our legislative delegation, both state and federal. So much so that I have standing calls with Congresswoman Trahan's aide. Quite literally, he called me the other day. Hey, we've got this federal earmark. Just so you guys know, it's due on Wednesday. So if you're looking to apply, it's due on Wednesday. But he identified, hey, if you have projects, please apply. We'd like to submit them. So I have great relationships with our delegation. And that has reap success. So last year I did get an earmark for the town of Acton, $750,000 for the rehabilitation of a building behind Town Hall for a community center in town, network and communication to receive MassWorks grants, community compact grants. So if I totaled it up, it's been almost $7 million in 4 years that I've been able to assist with bringing. And I think a lot of that is through the relationships that I've developed with both the Baker Polito administration, but also just our legislative delegation that is able to kind of make those contacts as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from the board?
No, me, I'm good.
Okay. Opportunity for a closing statement.
Sure, yeah. So, again, I just want to thank you for taking the time. Again, I understand, I think the past few years through the pandemic and transition, I think has been challenging for, I think, obviously the board and the overall community. I really would look forward to serving you as your next town administrator. Again, I think as a Central Massachusetts guy who's driven through Rutland so many times, it's been amazing to see some of the changes that have happened. And I would really look forward to continue making a positive impact from a different role than just driving through or playing basketball behind Town Hall or kayaking at Rutland State Park. I think that I bring a lot of unique ideas, again, enthusiasm, ways to make innovations where possible. I think that matches again with a lot of the things that you're looking for as your next administrator. And again, I think from a stability standpoint, I really do think that I can provide that over the next several years as we kind of work through some of the challenges that we're having. And I really do believe that really the best future and the days are ahead for the town of Rutland, and I really would be honored to be a part of that.
Thank you.
Okay, great. All set.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you.
Grab a seat at the table, introduce yourself to the board.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Hi there.
Good to see you.
Too.
Okay. Stephanie, first, congratulations on being one of the finalists for the position here in Rutland, and thank you for coming in, especially a few minutes early from the scheduled time. So we're ready for you early, so why don't we get started and get into this interview. So
Sure.
why don't we start with you introducing yourself to the board, why you're interested in the position, and why you think you'd be a great fit for the position.
Sure. I'm Stephanie King. I graduated with regional planning, a bachelor's degree, which was funny because back then regionalism was just a new concept altogether. But I fell in love with planning. Through that, I fell in love with engineering, plans for roads, construction, and somehow I got into, fortunately, municipal government as health director in Barry, a cute little town. And they had a lot to do. It was the perfect town to start in because it was small, but we had so many different things going on that year. That was 2006. We had the ice storm. We had just so many different facets of local government that I actually got to work with, either DPW, with water sewer, with police, fire, emergency preparedness. So it was a great, I'd say, step in municipal government. From there, I continued my role. I moved to Rutland in 2005, and I decided to join the Conservation Commission first, I believe. And I think it was within a week, Karen resigned as chair, and because I had experience in plans and engineering and going before conservation commissions on the engineering side, I was, they asked me to be chairman, and so of course I did. I loved it. And I was elected to the planning board because of my love again for planning, you know, reading, designing, and through that I continued on in municipal government. I think it was about 2015, 2016. I sat on a few other boards, like the bylaw subcommittee in Rutland, and then I decided to run for selectman. Fortunately, I was elected, and that's when I said, okay, I know what I want to do. I want the business administrative side of municipal government. And I was in Northborough as their health agent at the time, and I said, okay, well, I have to obtain my MPA. So I did that, and the position in Holden came up as the assistant town manager, and of course I jumped on it. And it's been an incredible experience. And I said in my head right from the beginning, I'm going to give it 5 years because I've never done anything halfway. I knew I thoroughly needed to learn municipal government, the management side, actually doing and performing the role. And I feel confident now that I would be a great town administrator.
So what's some of your responsibility as the assistant in Holden?
The town manager and I pretty much share all the roles except I'm also the HR director for the town, so I handle everything from personnel issues, I handle collective bargaining. I'm just trying to think of what else I do that he doesn't do. But other than that, it's the same budgeting. I prepare the capital budget, operational budget, work on grants, yeah, everything from soup to nuts, running a town, jumping around from department to department, making sure that everyone has what they need. If they have any questions, I'm the go-to person, so Peter, the town manager, can keep his nose to the grindstone and do what he needs to do. Yeah.
So you were a select person here.
I was,
from 15 to 18.
Yeah.
What benefits, do you have in having served in that role and then coming back basically 5 years later?
Really, I learned that it is imperative to all work together. Municipal government spells out teamwork. Everyone has to be open to suggestions, opinions, and at the end of the day, we all have a collective decision to make, and we work together. That's imperative. And in Holden, we all sit together, whether it's in a situation like this, tough budget times, we sit together collectively. We don't ever say, hey, listen, you need to cut X, Y, and Z. It's more of a open communication. What takes priority? Look at your budget. What do you think you can do without? Even if we just did this with DPW, you have to cut $200,000. I didn't say, oh, you have to cut this plow. You have to cut. They tell us what is imperative in order for them to get by. So we have that great communication across the board, and everyone respects each other, and that's the way it should be.
So how would you work with the board in understanding the vision of the board for the town? And how would what do you see your role in that process, as well as setting a path for implementation?
Right, well, I would make sure that we were always on the same page. I thoroughly understood the goal that you wanted to see come to fruition. And I would have my suggestions, and as long as the board felt that that's the direction they wanted to go, then I would implement and make sure it happened.
So the board is in consensus that leadership skills are critical in this hire, particularly with the community having to move forward, with facing, some of the issues that have been divisive. Also, they're talking about a budget override to be able to move forward. So what skills and approach will you bring to the table to address this?
Well, I would bring my past experiences. Even Holden was always, we had a lot of cushion to our levy limit. We don't anymore. And we said this for, the last couple of years. We felt it coming closer and closer and closer, and it was always Paxton Rutland that we're feeling the squeeze. We're all feeling it together. I know that connection of the history that I've had with Wachusett Regional School District and the other 4 towns. We're in it together. I have that knowledge base, and I have suggestions right now for the town of Rutland of what I think you should do and where I think you should go, and at the end of the day, that's your decision to make. But it's transparency. It's making sure that the public really understands what we're up against and our needs, our priorities, what would happen if the override didn't pass, and how the cuts would affect their resources. And it's tough because, of course, everyone wants to see the school succeed, the town succeed. That's the community overall. So nobody wants to see a failing on one side or the other. But you have to come together and decide. Rutland, of course, will have to show a budget if the override didn't pass, and they're going to have to show what would change if the override passed. This is why we're asking for the money. This is why it's essential. This is what we've been going without for X amount of years. And as long as you make it clear and transparent and get the word out, and I cannot say that enough, you have to start now. And we've learned it just the Shrewsbury Department of Transportation. We had funding in the tune of $17 million that, and I'm sure Joe Buckley would know this and you would know this, that if you're a town that's chosen for one of these projects, you jump right on it, because then you go to the end of the list if you don't get it passed through town meeting. Well, our first town meeting, we did not get it passed, and we looked at each other and we were like, what the heck? Why did this happen? How could this happen? It happened because we did not educate our community enough, and we didn't get the word out, and we didn't go about it properly. So we gave it another shot. The state said, the Department of Transportation said, okay, we'll give you one more shot, and then, sorry, Holden, you're going to the bottom of the list, and you won't have this funding available. So we did. Our idea, we piggybacked on something that the community was really excited about. It was another field project that we were going to pass, and we did it simultaneously. Everyone got the education that they needed, and they were able to ask the questions that they needed asked, and it passed at special town meeting, and we learned a lot from that. So it's just getting the word out, making sure people understand, and be there to answer the questions when people have them.
So there's been changes in this position. There's been some turnover in others. So what type of leadership skills are needed to create a team?
I would say stay involved, and that's what I do. I'm always involved, not as in a micromanager. And fortunately for me, I know the department heads here, and it just goes to show you, as long ago as I was here in Rutland, most of them are still here. So that shows they're extremely dedicated. I know for a fact they run their departments amazingly on little resources. So it wouldn't be an effort at all to sit with them if they had any questions. I do it to this day. We promoted our rec director. Our rec director left. We promoted somebody from within, and it was very new to her. Budget season was there. We went from 2 revolving funds to 1, which was, she just didn't understand. And to tell you the truth, the director that left was there for eons. Nobody asked her questions because she knew what she was doing. And when it came down to it, when I had to look at the budget, I was like, wow, I don't know what's coming in, what's leaving, are we making money from the pool? Are we not? Are we making money from before and after? Are we not? So we had to literally start from scratch and go through every single program and X out the ones that we identified weren't making money. There's other lessons we learned too. It's a revolving fund, so basically it's fee-based. And the tennis courts, for instance, had to be resurfaced and painted again, and that was $50,000 coming out of her account. And she's like, wow, that's a lot of money. And I said, well, how often do you use the courts for? And she said, oh, we have one little program. So essentially that should be coming out of the general fund. It shouldn't be coming out of a revolving fund when she uses it such a small amount of time. So it's just, identifiers like that. You learn, and sometimes the department head will need you to work with them, and that's great. I love that. It teaches me too, and you learn to break things apart and find a solution.
So with Rutland's size, location, and demographics, what are the key issues that need to be addressed here?
They haven't changed. We're a bedroom community, but I'll tell you what, Rutland is resilient. Rutland has been through a lot, and there's a reason why people come here. So a lot of people say begrudgingly, there's too many homes. Honestly, we have to take that as a compliment, because people come here for a reason. They come here because it's beautiful, it's agricultural based, they want to raise their kids here, they feel it's a safe environment. So with that said, we have to capitalize on what we have. We can't, we're not going to put an eyesore in the middle of town just to collect some money. And I'm so glad that through the years, Rutland has been strong enough to say no to things that wouldn't have blended well in this community at all. With that said, I see a lot of potential growth commercial retail wise, especially because of the 142 units that have been approved at Rutland Heights. So you look at that population and their needs, and other businesses, if we market it the right way, will come in and say, wow, there's 142 units. Well, let's double that, because there's probably going to be 2 people in each unit. What are their needs? Would it be a health club? Would it be doctors? Would it be professional offices? We still have a little bit of land, I think around 50 acres there. So working with real estate agents, promoting, I don't know if Rutland has done this, but sweep, an inventory of everything we have that's marketable for commercial retail space. And do that list, make sure it gets into the right hands so we can advocate, we can market for those areas. And again, we should be able to say yes to things we feel strongly about, so the landscape doesn't change. It's still Rutland as we see it. And going through the master plan survey, that was the point that the residents had. We do want commercial, we do want retail, but we don't want Rutland to change aesthetically, which I get.
So as you know, you started Citizen Volunteer. Rutland relies on its citizen volunteers. How do you build trust with them and a solid relationship?
Well, you're there, you're listening, you're open-minded, just, how you are with residents of the town. They want to be heard. So, and that's what I meant by working together. Everybody has to work together, whether it's the Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, CIPC, department heads. town committees and boards, everybody has to work together, listening and coming together with a solid solution to whatever problem might be there.
Finances. What's your role in financial planning, you know, in Holden and developing in a budget, capital budget, so on?
Yeah, I usually start in October. It seems like we have the same type of capital structure. It's, you know, from high priority to lower priority. First is, you know, if it's a threat to life, is it maintenance? Is it, you know, something new that's needed? Why? So I started in October, send out an email with a capital budget packet to all the employees, and they get that in by November. The town manager and I start to review it, review each department's capital budget. You know, if we have any questions, we might make a few phone calls, but we don't really sit. And then later on, towards the end of November, that's when their operational budget's due. The entire month of December, we sit with each department head, go through their budget, both the capital and their operating budget. We look for any increases. This year, we work great with our finance committee. Our finance committee, we realized through the years, and this just literally got resolved this year, of course, they forget. The department head will come in and, you know, the next meeting, they'll be talking about something else, and they'll say like, why did we need another ambulance, da, 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 da. So this year, we decided, in addition to our budget, that we're going to do any changes. So your line item 5294, what it's for, why it changed, and they can just go back. They'll flip their book. On the budget book, we have any capital requests. We have any line item increases with an explanation. So they can just thumb through if they have any questions. Otherwise, just, you know, email Peter or I, and they have their answer right there. So it made it a lot more seamless. And then, you know, of course, we're working on the warrant language right now. Anything that's coming in, I started that, but we're still waiting on a few issues that we have with certain things. But it's in the works. We're getting all the language together. We'll have town council review, and then, yep, we'll be ready for town meeting.
So how would you immerse yourself in Rutland's finances as an administrator and its budget process?
Thoroughly. I would jump right in. Yeah, I've been following your meetings, and I know where you're at. It's not a fun place to be, but from my perspective, you have to get the word out, and you have to get it out relatively quick. I was looking at some other overrides. Belmont, it was 2022 to 2024. They went for a 3-year funding. So basically, instead of 1 year, they funded their override over 3 years. And I loved their approach. They not only put it out. I know in Holden, our main page of our website gets so many hits per day, like thousands. So that's where we would put our main message in response to, I mean, everywhere else as well. But a town should really have and train their community one place that they're going to find information. So when a person's like, okay, town meeting, I'm going to go to this website. So they're just used to going to the same place. And it's good to, of course, have all of your department heads, drumming it up and making sure that everybody knows, because, of course, we're, 2 months before town meeting. But I just wanted to print this out. So they did a PowerPoint. So they linked it to their town website, but it just has a lot of great information. So if you don't mind, do you mind if I give it to them? Yeah, it's just, you know, it gives you a little bit of a process so you can figure out, it's just a nice, easy, concise way. There's a lot in the pages, but honestly, it hits the nail on the head of where, and they seem to have their school budget is combined in the town budget. But I was thinking of that too. I wonder if another approach would be to join with the school, and the superintendent, as you know, he's been trying to clean up what was left for him. But I wonder if we go together at town meeting and say, listen, these are our budgets. We need them passed. If they are not passed, this is what's gonna happen school side, this is what's gonna happen town side. Everybody's dealing with inflation right now. It's across the board. Everyone knows that, you know, but we can't, material costs, trying to order a vehicle takes 2 years. So with that said, if we had a joint approach, maybe it would solicit a better response. But if you read that PowerPoint, it's basically together. It'll say, you know, these are the town needs, these are the school needs. What happens if the override fails? What happens if it passes? And that's where you show the public, listen, you know, we're not only going to be able to maintain, but we're actually going to be able to, you know, fix this building, maybe fix a field, whatever. It's of course, and we know this too, anything tangible, anything people can see, that's where it clicks, and they're like, oh, okay. And I think people love this community because it's Rutland. We have a lot of outdoor events and places to go, but when the buildings start to look deteriorated and, you know, their libraries closed, their senior center, you know, that's needed a lot of work for years, they're gonna start to notice. So these are the things that we can put before them. Hey, listen, this is where your dollars are going. And we're dealing, like everybody else, with inflation issues. There's no going around it.
So hypothetical, Steph, get a local resident, stands up at town meeting, you're the administrator, and proceeds at length to lecture the citizens of the town on the various town functions that he or she feels are wasteful and extravagant. Through sheer force of personality, this citizen riles up the meeting, and they are bound and determined to slash funding to programs you believe are vital. How do you address that?
Oh, I would say, thank you very much for your comments, but we have to think about facts, and we have to speak of facts, and if they were talking specifically about a department, I might have the department head come up and explain, or of course, if I understood and had the correct answer for them, I would speak on their points. But it's going to happen, and guess what it comes down to? People being uneducated. So that's, again, where we have to educate, and get the word out. And I know, you know, for years, we can educate on something, and, you know, people are busy. This isn't their world, this is our world. So whatever way, with social media becoming so prevalent, everyone's on their phone, everyone's connected, that's why I'm saying we need to get a point of contact that people can go and have it in their head. Okay, I'm gonna go to this website, this is where I'll always find the information, whether it's a link to another department or whatnot. You know, we just have to reinforce education.
So switching gear to HR, what are some of the important issues that need to be addressed in HR today?
I'll tell you what, it's just, you go anywhere, a doctor's office, there's no doctors. I don't know where everyone's working today, but they're going somewhere. People, especially the younger generation, and I don't mean to make myself sound old, but the younger generation, they want It's not even so much money, it's a sense of purpose, and they want flexibility. That's what I've discovered. So it's keeping them engaged with town, municipal government. They do have a purpose, and they can see, again, there's that tangible thing like, oh, okay, yep, we're building this project, we're, buying this vehicle, we're doing something. So they like that, but we have to keep them engaged. And another huge thing, of course, is with municipal government, we kind of, let people go, and the work piles, but the people become fewer, and we have to keep ahead of pay, because that's, not only in the public sector, but the private sector, it's almost competitive these days. So as long as we're treating our employees fairly and keeping them engaged, keeping them trained, making sure they can do their job, and I'm telling you, just even with DPW wise, the CDL licenses, so that's almost like, what, $7,000 a pop to get people. And we're going through that now. We're working with our labor council to come up with a plan. So if we're outputting that cost, they, have to stay with us for so long, and if they don't, they have to pay it back, because that's a lot of money. But it's mandated by the state, so of course we have to follow the rules. So I would just say keeping everybody engaged, again, fair pay, making sure the community sees that we have worked so long and so hard with a skeleton crew, and it comes to a point that if our tax base has to come up a little bit in order to run efficiently, that's what we have to, implore the public to just, have a good mindset and understand. It's just like any other business. We're running a $24 million business, and times change.
So when you're hiring these employees, what 3 qualities do you seek?
I seek, it depends if it's like a department head position or whatnot, but I seek personality, first of all. Do they have energy? Do they have drive? Of course, municipal government is public service. There's some departments that aren't eye to eye with the public, but it's so important. Image is everything. And if you don't like public service, don't be here, or don't be in that position. It doesn't go well. And I would just say flexibility, adaptability, if they have energy, want, need, you can tell. I am in many interviews, and let's just say I do have a good knack, fortunately, for choosing the right people. Yeah.
So tell us about a difficult personnel issue you had, dealing with an employee, and how did you resolve it and get to an agreement?
There's been many, but it's honestly, if they have an issue, if they come to me and they're like, oh, it's not really a big deal. Well, it is a big deal, because if they're in my office and they're even approaching the subject, it's probably a bigger deal than they're letting on if they're in my office. So we work through it. If it usually involves somebody else, I either give them tools to work with that other person, and usually that's the way they want it, because they don't want me to come in, because then that will make them feel uncomfortable, because they put them in a bad situation. So I will either give them tools they need to be able to have more difficult conversations, or if it's escalated to that degree, then I talk to the other person, and we figure out a plan. And there's a lot of times there is somebody that is well, let's just say a little bit difficult, and you just basically have to illustrate the way, you know, business is to be run and respect, and you know, what our ideal situation is, like public service. Don't put the work on just one person, you know, everyone has to share the responsibilities, you need to go up to the window too, you know, it's yeah, you just break it down and just have a one-to-one, and, you know, don't get angry, don't let it escalate any further, and, yeah.
So, you know Rutland, it's lean and mean. And, you know, you're in Holden where, you know, you've got a little bit more resources.
Yes.
How do you adjust coming back, you know, as a town administrator to lean and mean?
Honestly, that part doesn't faze me, because whatever it is, even if Holden, you know, we're a little bit cushy, if I see a grant, I'm like, oh, yes, if it's free, it's for me. You know, so I have that drive anyway, and I'm used to Rutland. I understand what Rutland's always been up against, but I foresee in the future Rutland is going to change, and I hope I can help be that change. It doesn't scare me, let's put it that way. Where other people it would, I already discussed, like, everybody is so dedicated here. They pull their weight. They're just good, solid people, and we've always found a way. We've always been resilient, and there's a lot out there. We've had a ton of funding, state and federally. Just even, you know, I have a great relationship with Kim, our state rep, and I go to her now like, hey, listen, this is what we're looking for. We want to, you know, develop this area. Do you have anything? Have you heard of anything? And you just have to stay connected and be able to really research what it is you need. Like, we're in Holden right now, just even something silly like our zoning bylaws haven't been looked at for years. Our use tables are just they're so antiquated. Our ADA policy was so old. So I'm using some of our DLTA, district local technical assistance from CMRPC, so I'm using some hours there. We have Community One Stop, we're putting through a MassWorks project that we're redoing. We're revitalizing our old fire station, which is down towards Dunkin' Donuts, the state police. And that was connected to the DPW building. We just got our DPW in a few months ago to the new building. So we're going to take that down. We want to redevelop it, revitalize that area, and build a little, you know, fire substation. So we have a lot of plans, but we were fortunate to receive funding. If we didn't have funding, it would be a very long process, town meeting. We're doing right now, like Rutland, we did a building feasibility study for all of our town buildings, and they're not in good shape. The building I'm in is from the 1700s, so yeah, we're busting out of the seams just like Rutland. So we have to find a plan and something that, you know, for so long we've been just putting Band-Aids on things and moving people here, moving people there, and it doesn't make sense. I mean, our outlook, like Rutland's, is to be able to have a one-stop shop. So basically the public comes in, you have all your service departments. That would be so nice. So we're coming together with a plan, but of course it takes money. We can use ARPA funds. I know Rutland still has some left, right, around 800 or so, but yeah, that's the first step, and we're nervous about, you know, not using our funding in enough time. But as you know, projects you just become engrossed in them, and before you know it, time flies, and you're like, oh my God, I just got a grant extension actually on money that we didn't spend in time, and the state was nice and they allowed that, but that won't happen all the time. So it's,
So as a follow-up to that, let's say IT. You need IT services, you don't have an IT director. You know, how do you go about addressing that?
it's so funny because I'm the worst with technology, and I'm actually like their IT department lead. So, but I've learned a lot. Yeah. IT wise, we actually have 3 IT people in town. I know that seems like a lot, and I kind of have to bring it all in together. We're looking for other ways, technology. For instance, we had all of our storage and our servers were all separate all over the town. We have a light department, so I mean, it was just tons and tons of equipment. And so we called, we work with Hub Tech a lot, and they're a consulting firm. We do a lot of work with them. And they said, oh, well, have you ever heard of SimpliVity? It's a storage server in one. So it basically cuts down on half of the equipment, and of course it cuts down on half of the maintenance and the upgrades and everything else. So we were able to institute that. What else are we doing? Munis. We have had Munis financial systems for years, and we only tapped into what we have. It's very aggravating. Munis, it's, I'm sure you've heard of it. There's a ton of financial companies, but they're one of the main ones that I'd say a majority of the towns have. But I wouldn't recommend them. It's just, they have a lot of learning curves too, because there's new people coming in. I've worked with some amazing people there. But it's very hard to unravel. And for instance, we spent a year with somebody setting up our table. So like police and fire, they have umpteen tables that are attached to pay. So, you know, the fire department might have a stipend for this, a stipend for that, overtime, so you have to connect the employee with every single type of pay. We did all of that, and they were like, ooh, you did it wrong. We were like, oh my God. So it's like, it's just hard to find a program that you like, but we're in it so deep right now that we have to keep Munis, and we're going to. So we're opening up the employee self-service. So Rutland's ahead of us because we don't even have our benefits like vacation time, sick time on our paychecks. That's how antiquated we are. But so yeah. We're working on that IT-wise. We're looking into ClearGov, which is amazing. It's so this is an addition to our financial software. It is a software where department heads can input their budgets. And of course, it can stay, private among until we're done with the budgeting, and then you can put it out to the public, so the public can see, and it automatically will create charts like pie charts. It'll create future forecasts for revenue receipts or whatnot. So it's right there. It's easy to read, and it's just, it has transparency written all over it. It makes it so the community is on the same page as you, and all of the information stays there, so you can just add on year to year. So we're looking into that. We're actually applying the Community One Stop grant for that. I think the next one comes out in August.
So how would you increase communications, both internally and externally?
Internally, we always, with the department heads, once a month, the first Tuesday of the month, we have a department head meeting, and we all go around the table talking about, what projects are going on, So that helps a lot, or what tasks need to be taken care of, and then with that is a lot of follow-up. So I make sure, okay, yep, hey, did you do this yet? My cell phone, I use it on my calendar. I'm like, yep, tell John this. Did you check that? It's just so everyone's on the same page and everyone can stay together. So internally, we don't have any issues. We'll, of course, talk by email. we have an open door policy. When the department heads want to come in, they come in, they discuss whatever it is they need. The community, like I said, if you have a pivotal place that all of your information goes, it doesn't matter, right? If a department head wants to share the same thing on their page, but as long as you have one page and you can have a link to somewhere, that's, you know, the community needs to know, okay, if I go here, I'm going to get the information I need. You know, of course, we always use our electronic signs. We use cable a lot. We will put blurbs in a landmark. Yeah, but our Facebook generates, we don't put any job postings in the newspaper anymore. We put them on MMA and we put them on Facebook. That's where we get most of our applicants because it's a social media world.
So let's talk a little conflict resolution. Describe an example of where you had a polarizing issue, in a community, and how did you get it addressed? How were you able to, get something accomplished, ultimately?
Well, I mean, God, it happens all the time. I'm just trying to think of a specific incident. I'm just thinking of, we had a, I don't know why this jogged into my mind, but we had somebody, the speed signs that, that flash. Well, it was a permanently fixed one, and it was on a residential road, and the neighbor that lived across from it, even though it was facing this way, they said they saw the lights flash, and well, I don't know what lights they were looking at, but anyway, so they didn't like it there. They said, they were never asked, and XYZ, and so we met. We showed them that the lights couldn't possibly flash in his house. We ended up moving it. Long story short, because it's not worth it at the end of the day. If you want your community to be happy, and their biggest asset, their house, and so we ended up moving it. But that stuff happens all the time, and we sit with the person. Again, like I said, listening is everything. They want to be heard, and if you can't fix the situation, you just have to explain why. Or this happens so many times. Like I know they picture Main Street being the town of Holden. It's like, no, you have to call Mass DOT, and I'm sure that happens all the time with you too. It's like you just have to explain. I know, I'm sorry. I'll give you all the contacts you need, but the town can't do anything for you because of X, Y, and Z. And usually they're fine if they're heard and there's an explanation.
Okay. So dealing with the board, how would you describe the overall relationship, you envision, working with the board?
Extremely collaborative, and like I said, everything has to be a team approach. Everyone has different personalities. Everyone is going to have a different idea, but at the end of the day, we have to come together with the best idea for the community. And the Board of Selectmen, they're the soundboard for the community. That's why they're elected. That's why they're hired. So as long as, if the Board of Selectmen had a goal they wanted me to accomplish, or they had a issue, as long as I gave them as much research, pros and cons, and I don't care if they make the opposite decision than me. If I give you the information and you feel secure enough that that's the right answer, then yeah, it's a collaborative approach.
So how do you define that successful relationship, between the board and administrator?
I would say at the end of the day, even though we may, see things different ways, we're all able to get along and move forward.
Okay. So what if during a board meeting, a motion is made to enter executive session, but based on your experience and training, you believe the subject is not executive and that, it's not a proper motion? What do you do at that point?
I would quietly talk to the chair and, give them that information.
Okay. And what's your first 90 days look like on the job?
Honestly, I could hit the pavement immediately, and I think that's the best thing about me understanding the town, knowing the department heads. I would feel like I'm in my office in Holden. Okay, let's go. Where's the budget? Let's, we got to do this. I could jump in where somebody else they might take 6 months to a year to get acclimated. That's the benefit I feel of this situation.
And in 1 year from now, let's say you're the town administrator, and 1 year from now, the board, is asking you to do a report on your first year.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to be able to say were your accomplishments, some of your major accomplishments during that first year?
Financial stability, prospect of economic development, reviewing policies, maybe some policy changes that are needed, whether it's, whether it's more zoning changes, whether it's, look at, I would want to be clear on the goals the selectmen would want before me. What do you want to see? And try to implement those changes and come up with a strategy so we can actually see it come to fruition. We have a lot of, and again, I don't know what changed planning board wise, but I remember when I was on the planning board, of course, Main Street is all residential homes, and we said, okay, well, how can we facilitate commercial retail growth here? So that's when we came up with the overlay of mixed use, and so you'd be able to have a little shop on the bottom and, a residence or residential on top, rentals or whatnot. So yeah, it's the image that the town would like. The EPA actually, they have online toolkit. It's an assessment. So basically, it's for rural communities specifically, and you do a little survey, and it basically asks you questions that triggers like, oh, okay, maybe we should do that. Like whether or not it's some, for instance, for more smart growth, they have they rezone and they have it clustered. Residents clustered, so you'd have your downtown, so it's more focused on commercial retail, or rezoning. Like I know Ocam, they have like 2-acre lots instead of 1.5 for smart growth. So there's ways that you can go about it, but it's just the goals of the board and how what they would want to see. But I would hope, coming from my standpoint, financial stability right away, and making sure that we're tapping into any possible economic development.
Sure. All right, so you've had a very nice 16, 17-year career in municipal government, starting as a health director, coming up through assistant town manager now. What's your future looking like?
Hopefully it's here. I think that's the next logical step for me, is being a town administrator and putting my education and my experience.
Okay, great.
Well,
Open to the board for questions.
If I can
Sure.
go over, do you want to start?
So you could start.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Circling back a little bit to the not the economic development, sorry, the lean and mean model and everything. We don't have this, we don't have the supports and the depth of staff. And even in Holden, as an assistant town manager, there's kind of two of you, right, that are dividing and conquering, town manager and assistant. We have an executive administrative assistant in the office and everything, but we don't have those layers of support. So while there's the financial side of not having the finances to do the work, there's also not having the staff to do some of the things. So how comfortable are you in being?
Yeah, honestly, if you're getting at there's, for me and my personality, and this is why it's good because I started from the bottom up. I mean, I started from, you know, I was a volunteer, and then I was like in the cusp of, you know, municipal government in a department, and then, you know, I was on boards and committees. So there's every facet of municipal government. You just have to dig in anyway. Like if I walked into my building and it was slippery, there's salt right inside. I'd take a scoop of salt and I'd put it. There's no job that's below me. Is it going to be busier? Is it going to be more demanding? Yeah, absolutely. But will I learn a lot? And can I hopefully make positive changes so we're not, you know, running our business like that? So we have the right support. Hopefully, that's why I'm here. Rutland is growing, and Rutland will continue to grow and evolve, and we need to make sure we have the right foundation, because we're not this little tiny town anymore. We have a lot of responsibility, and people want to see Rutland maintained and growing in a way that they will continue to want to bring their families here and have the amenities that they, you know, pay for.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome.
Steve, did you have?
No, I'm good.
All set?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, opportunity for a closing statement on your part.
I would just say thank you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to interview, and I really do have, my heart is in Rutland. I know there's been so many town administrators that have come and gone, and I just don't want the mistake of having somebody coming here and, you know, just to get their feet wet or, you know, to try to launch their career. I have, I'm vested in the community. My kids go to Central Tree. They'll be here for, you know, years to come, and there is that dedication, and there's that, you know, love of the town that I can sincerely tell you that I will do my best, and I would love to grow and develop the town and make it a community that, you know, I'll continue raising my kids in, and, you know, hopefully everybody else will, and we'll have that relief of, you know, that financial burden. That's what I'm here to try to get rid of.
Great. So once again, thank you and congratulations on
Thank you.
being here. And the board, I think we discussed, there's one member not present tonight, and she'll have the opportunity to review the tape before next Monday. But the board will have the discussion next Monday night at their meeting, and hopefully make a decision, you know, at that meeting as to how to move forward. So you'll be hearing from me, you know, at that point.
Great.
Okay?
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Drive safe, everyone.
You too.
Yeah, you do that.
Keep that salt,
Keep
salt
that.
ready.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, what's that?
He said
Keep
keep
the
the salt ready. You might be
No
having to
kidding.
spread it.
I know. I can't believe they already canceled school. That was
Oh,
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
So everyone knows.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Thanks.
So, Mr. Chair, we had 11 applicants for the position, and I want to thank Julie Jacobson, the recently retired town manager out of Auburn, who lives right in Paxton, for serving on a committee along with Donna Vanderclock, who's a retired manager out of Weston, and they served on the review panel with us and did the interviews. So I want to thank them for their participation. So hopefully this evening you saw 3 enthusiastic people with different types of careers, you know, coming back. They got a little bit different background, you know, coming in. You see, you know, some heavy HR in one, assistant town manager with health background, and the third candidate who, and 2 of them have been former selectmen, you know, and understand the role from that side as well, and a person who has a lot of financial, you know, background to them. So you got 3, I think, you know, highly capable, enthusiastic candidates for the board to review. So you'll have it on your agenda. You have the report from us. We did references. We did backgrounds on these folks, so you have that. As you notice, the references, you know, we keep it in a positive mode. So as you discuss, we ask boards to keep the discussion in a positive mode. These people, you know, have careers, they have backgrounds, so we always ask when you do your discussion, please do it as to what a candidate brings, you know, to the table that could be positive, you know, to, you know, your community. So it's a positive discussion as you move forward, you know, next week. So that's what we have. I think I mentioned to you earlier, I'll join you by Zoom next week. I'm available for questions in between. So if something pops up, you know, you have a question on something, you have my cell phone, it's in on my email, you have my email, and you know, more than available to answer any questions you may have. But at this point, we're turning it over to you now for your decision. You can have your discussion next Monday, and again, I'll be available for comments. I don't have anything else to add at this point unless you have questions, you know, on the candidates.
I mean, I want to thank you. I think you brought some great candidates to us. I think it's going to be difficult decisions, so I look forward to, you know, seeing what the board's discussion comes to. But you did. I think you did a great job. I think the questions were good. I think the candidates are quality, and I appreciate that. So.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for the time you spent with the questions also, because it's helpful. I'm one that likes to write a lot down
Sure.
and take it all in, and so it helps not having to have that back and forth.
Yeah, we were
so I
talking about
appreciate
that a little bit earlier, I think maybe with Tom and Lyndon earlier, about how we started this about 3 years ago, and people seem to like it. Because you, again, you know, it gets awkward when you get 5 people,
Yeah.
you know, thinking, you know, is it my time to ask the question or whatever? And it just, you know, seems to flow, you know, better when we do it on our end. But, you know, we certainly don't mind providing the service. But I know, you know, it's always helpful to sit back and listen and, you know, understand it. So
I think it's
I'm glad you
difficult for the
enjoyed it.
candidates as well when you get all these different people asking questions and stuff and trying to. So
Yeah.
I think it does move well. So.
Yeah, and hopefully I'm not adding any flavor to the question.
Yeah.
You know, as to, you know, sometimes you get that.
Sure,
and,
Yeah.
you know,
she
and
gets
you
it.
think you're hearing something coming across. And,
Yeah.
hopefully I'm asking them in a neutral way, you know, going forward.
In my work, we alternate, and I always get the worst questions.
Yeah.
So I appreciate not having those questions. But. Does the
Okay.
board have anything
Thank
else? All right, we will
Thank
see
you.
you on Zoom
Thank you,
on
Tom.
Monday.
Okay,
Appreciate
great.
it.
Drive
Is there
safe.
any other issues that the board needs to discuss? I know-
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, roll call,
Clock eye.
Galvin, aye.
Wait a minute.
and Nichols' eye. All right, thank you
Okay.
very much.